Councilman Harrison on the meeting.
Welcome, Councilman.
Thank you.
Councilman, do you have any idea if any of your council colleagues were planning on attending?
No, not offhand.
Okay, not a problem.
I assume Joey is planning on joining, as far as we know.
I have not heard from her. So let's give her a couple more minutes. It's only 6 o'clock.
Okay.
Members of the public who are here, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time and your attention. We'll be starting the meeting in just a couple of minutes.
Michael, do you want to give Joey till 6:05, or do you want to start earlier? Or,
Let's just give it one more minute.
okay.
Somebody text Sherry or Jerry.
I'll text her.
Okay, great.
Yes, thanks.
Thank you.
I think we should welcome our new member, Katie Dominguez, to the board. I see her name up there.
Absolutely.
Welcome.
As soon as we start the meeting, we'll swear her in.
Do you have an oath? I need to get an oath.
An oath or a note?
No,
Yes, I have. Yeah, I have the note. I have the letter from the mayor. I sent it to you.
no, not that. I need to, I don't have that oath.
Oh, you don't
I've
have the
got-
oath in front of you.
I do now.
Okay.
I
Good.
do now. All right. Sometimes the clerk swears people in.
Yeah, we didn't do that this time. Kati, can you get on camera? Are you able to get on camera? Is your camera working?
Yes, it says that it's on.
Okay, well, let's work. Well, why don't we work on that while we're waiting for Terry to come? If worse comes to...
Katie, am I pronouncing your name right? Is it Katie?
It's Kathy.
It's Kathy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Kathy, worst comes to worst, we're not voting on anything today. So if we didn't swear you in until next time, it's totally fine.
Okay, sounds good.
But if you can try and get on camera to swear us, we'd love to do that.
Can you see me now?
Yeah, we got
Yes.
it.
Okay.
So,
I think we
Sherry,
should. Oh, go.
she says she's coming. She's stuck on a work call.
Okay, why don't we get started and Cherry can chime in whenever she gets on.
Okay.
Hold on, let me start the recording.
Okay. Okay, recording has started. Meeting is called to order at 6:07 p.m. This meeting of the Planning Board of the City of Trenton is being held in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act pursuant to NJSA 10.4-9.1 and NJSA 10.4-9.3, controlling and permitting electronic meetings during a declared public health emergency. Electronic notice of this meeting and the information by which the public may participate has been posted on the city's website, sent to the official newspapers of the planning board, and posted at a conspicuous location at City Hall as provided by law. George, you able to do a roll call?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
Charles Romanow,
Present.
Anthony Santora, Jeff Halpern,
Present.
Joseph Harrison,
Present.
Marcus Green, Patricia Nima Mohammed,
Present.
Randy Baum,
Present.
Wanda Swigat, Jonathan Connor.
Present.
Oh, Jonathan, are you here? Okay. Kathy Dominguez.
Present.
Okay, Mr. Chair, we have 7 members. That constitutes more than enough for a quorum. We may proceed.
Okay, do we want to swear in Kati before we approve minutes?
Yeah, I'll do it. It's Kati.
Yes.
Okay, I had you at the TH. I butchered your name twice, and I apologize. Kati, I got it. I got it from here on in. Okay. Kati, would you please raise your right hand? And you're going to repeat after me. I, Kati Dominguez,
I, Katy Dominguez,
do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will faithfully,
that I will faithfully,
impartially,
impartially,
and justly perform
and justly perform
all the duties of a member
all the duties of a member
of the Trenton Planning Board,
of the Trenton Planning Board,
and that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will bear true allegiance
and that I will bear true allegiance
to the same
to the same
and to the governments
and to the government
established in the United States
established in the United States
and in this state
and in this state
under the authority of the people,
under the authority of the people,
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Great.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Kathy, and welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, first on the agenda, approval of minutes. We have minutes from April 13th and May 11th to approve. On the April 13th meeting, in attendance was myself, Randy, Lank, Pat, and Anthony. Do we have any comments on the April 13th minutes, board members?
No, I don't have any.
Okay.
Yeah, they looked okay to me.
Okay, I have a few comments. George, can you write them down? Or I can also email them to you.
I can write them down.
Okay. On the first page in the current planning board membership, where it lists all the members, I think Link's last name is misspelled. Should be with an E. It's spelled correctly on the top. But it's misspelled, and this is on both of them. It's misspelled in the public
And
hearing section.
What's the spelling? I don't have the.
It should be Conner. Is that correct, Link?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Okay.
Another name spelling thing on page 4, top page 4, Cassidy Boland from DVRPC. Her last name should be Boulan.
Okay.
And then paragraph below that, we mentioned that one of the deadliest intersections in America is in Trenton. I think we should add the name of the intersection, which I believe is 129 in Lalor.
Route 129 and Lalor Street.
Yeah. Bottom of,
Charles,
Yep.
it's not Cass. It's not Cass. It's
oh, is it
Lower.
Cass? Yeah, oh, yeah.
I think it's
Yeah,
Cass
right,
where the
Randy.
supermarket is.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Randy. Yes, thanks.
Okay.
Cass 129.
Layler's where the supermarket is. Cass is second.
Oh,
Cass is the next one.
right,
Cass
Cass
is
is where
You're absolutely
McDonald's
right.
is.
You're absolutely right.
Deadly
Whoops.
Okay.
intersection.
I take back
Thank you.
everything I just said.
That's okay.
Helpful if we had a map. And okay. Lalor, yes, Lalor, number one. Cass
Layler
number
is
two.
correct.
Yes.
Okay,
They're all awful, but Layler is
They're
the
all
correct
awful.
one.
They're all
the worst. Okay, thank you. Bottom page 4, it mentions IRJA. I think it should be IIJA. The Infrastructure Act, IIJA. And that's all I have for that one. Is there a motion to approve the April 13th minutes given those edits?
So moved.
Thank you, Pat. Is there a second?
Second.
second.
Thank you, Link and Randy. Can we have a roll call, George?
Oh, yeah. Charles Romanow,
Yes.
Jeff Halpern,
Yes.
Joe Harrison,
Abstain.
Patricia Nima Mohammed,
Yes.
Randy Baum,
Yes.
Jonathan Connor,
Yes.
Cotty Dominguez.
Yes.
Kari, you should abstain when you haven't been to the meeting. So you should abstain on this one.
Pat, Actually, Michael, I'm going to overrule you on that.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
You're allowed, people always abstain when they weren't present, and that's always fair to do, but they actually can vote. They can
Oh, okay.
participate in amendments and, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I just learned that this year, by the way, so I'm sharing my knowledge.
Yay.
Okay. And then, May 11th minutes. Anyone have any comments? The only comment I had was the same one about Lang's last name being misspelled. In the public hearing, bottom of page 1.
Okay?
And then, can we have a roll call for that one?
Yes, you may. Charles Romanow,
Yes.
Jeff Halpern,
Yes.
Joe Harrison,
Yes.
Patricia Nima Muhammad,
Yes.
Randy Baum,
Yes.
Jonathan Connor,
Abstain.
Cuddy Dominguez.
Abstained.
There you go.
All right, thank you. Next on the agenda, any resolutions to memorialize, George?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any announcements?
Yes, I got a lot of them.
Great.
So first of all, members of the public, since we have an unbelievable turnout today, and I really appreciate all of your time and all of your thoughtfulness as we deal with this LDO. You should all be, our planning board will be returning to in-person meetings in August. Our zoning board meeting will be returning to in-person meetings in September. Zoning board is waiting an extra month because they have cases that were in process that need to be finished out before they return to in-person. But planning board will be returning to in-person in August. Second of all, building on the work of this land development ordinance, we are redoing our redevelopment area plans in the area around the Trenton train station and the Trenton light rail stations. That is 7 redevelopment area plans that are going to shape the future of those parts of the city that are being redone. We are going to be presenting draft land redevelopment area plans for those at our September 14th planning board meeting. So if you're interested in the redevelopment plans around our train station and light rail station, the 7 redevelopment areas, then we'll be talking about them on September 14th, and we'd love to hear from members of the public there as well. Hopefully a lot of you can make it. Third, we are going to be hosting our 3rd and final bicycle open house. This is going to be in the North Ward this time. It's going to be on Saturday, August 5th. It's going to be at East Trenton Collaborative at 601 North Clinton. The time is not confirmed yet, still to be determined, but it'll be Saturday, August 5th. We wanted to let you know that in addition to giving feedback about the Trenton Bike Plan, the Trails Plan, and the Vision Zero Action Plan, the public will also have an opportunity to help paint a street mural on the corner of Sherman Avenue and North Clinton in an effort to help daylight that corner. So this is going to be a really amazing event with the public having a lot of things to do and help us with. You know, we're going to be doing beautification for the neighborhood on the scene that day, and you get to do all of it. Lastly, Randy, did you want to say anything about today's meeting about Front Street Garage?
Yes, Michael, of course. There's several planning board members and myself attended a meeting hosted today by the New Jersey Future and the Trenton Parking Authority to address the potential reuses, exploring potential reuses for the Front Street Garage. It's been closed for better than a decade. I believe it was built during the Art Holland administration and has been closed for 11 years, Michael, I think it was, somewhere in that neighborhood. It is incredibly valuable real estate in that it's right across the street from Mill Hill Park and in a pretty desirable downtown location. So this was a preliminary meeting of several civic organizations, concerned people who are civically active, et cetera, to try and put together a preliminary list of what the site could potentially become. And as that gets refined, ultimately take it to the public and try and get as much public input as we possibly can. It's a real opportunity for the city of Trenton to showcase its downtown and what can be done with some thoughts. And we're just kicked off today, so more to come.
So members of the public, if you can just be on the lookout, there's going to be a lot of engagement opportunities that happen for this between now and I would say the end of September. So if we don't have those dates right now, but if you can be on the lookout for them, we'd love to get your feedback about this area. And that's all the announcements, Charlie.
All right, thank you for those. We will move on to item number 1. And if Cherry not here, I guess I'll lead the item. Presentation, Trenton Land Development Ordinance. In March of 2023, the Division of Planning released a second draft of a new land development ordinance for the city of Trenton for public comment. This draft land development ordinance proposes to modernize the city's zoning regulations and align them with the Trenton 250 master plan. This presentation will review the comments that were received about the draft land development ordinance. The planning department will discuss potential changes to the draft ordinance. The public will have an opportunity to comment in this meeting. Michael, do you want to take it away?
Sure. I'm very excited to introduce you all once again to Camiros, which is our consultant for the Trenton Land Development Ordinance. We've been working with them for over 4 years on updating this land development ordinance. It's been a long process. This is now our second public comment period because we really wanted to make sure that all the concerns of the people of our city have been heard. We wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity not just to hear from you about what you'd like to see, but to make sure that we took what we heard and got it right. So we wanted to make sure you got a second chance to talk about this land development ordinance, provide feedback, and really make sure that we're getting it right. This meeting tonight is going to be our last opportunity for the public to provide input on it. Our goal is to come to City Council with a clean ordinance that they can pass without any further changes. Have a clean process to do so. So we're asking for everybody, if you've got something to say, speak tonight or forever hold your peace. I wanted to let you all know quickly, and we'll go over dates again when Arista presents, what the process is going to be as we move forward. So after tonight's meeting, we're going to make decisions tonight about how we want to move forward with all the public comments that we've received and anything else that we hear tonight. Once we hear from all that, we're going to make decisions. And then after that, that's going to lead us to a final draft. The final draft of the ordinance is going to be reviewed by Charlie Romanow, our planning board chair, and myself, just for a final proofread, just to make sure everything is reflected that you've said is reflected in the final draft. And then it goes to City Council. City Council, the process once it gets to City Council is that City Council adopts a resolution, referring it back to the planning board as a final draft. The planning board reviews that final draft and determines whether it's consistent with the master plan of the city of Trenton. It then returns it back to the city of Trenton, to the City Council for final adoption. We're hoping to move quickly on that as soon as we have a final draft, as quickly as we can. But we do want to make sure that we get this right. With that being said, I'd like to introduce you to Arista Strendrus, FIICP, who is our consultant on this project. She has been an unbelievable partner. She's a national expert on land use, and she's really been an outstanding leader for helping us get this right. So Arista, take it away.
Okay. Thank you, Michael, for that amazing introduction. Thank you all for being here. This is probably, for some of you, you've been along for this ride for many years. Just to say, Michael did say 4 years, but in the middle of that, COVID happened. So it's not like we just kind of took way too long to get through this. We all kind of went through the kind of living in our houses in sweatpants for a long time part of this. So what I have for you today is a very short PowerPoint. And then we're going to go through a couple of memorandums that outline the comments that we've heard. These memorandums will be posted tomorrow morning, by tomorrow morning, that can let you kind of read through everything that's there, as well as this PowerPoint also. So let me go ahead and share the PowerPoint. Okay. Play from start. If someone can give me a thumbs up that you can see it.
Thumbs up.
Great. Thank you. Okay. So we are here today to summarize the public comments that we've heard based upon the release that happened in March 2023. This is what you saw in March 2023 was a red line draft that showed all the public comments that we had heard to date and we had discussed with the planning board and others and made changes related to that. Okay. So what we've received, some of them are general statements. This is not uncommon. This happens to us in every kind of zoning ordinance update we make. These are comments that are not directly related to the LDO, and you'll see them briefly when we go into the memorandums themselves. But generally, people find the opportunity to participate and to kind of vent their feelings about what's going on. Many are really looking to just see Trenton become, the great city that it can be, and that's really what we saw in most of these LDO comments. We also received from some very diligent proofreaders within the city some corrections. These are non-substantive changes. These are clarifications, corrections, typos, and grammar. We try to be perfect, but it's a massive document, so sometimes we're not as perfect as we want to be. So we did receive those, and we're very grateful for those as well. The Watershed Institute also responded. They provided us a memorandum that looked at kind of different aspects of the LDO and how it relates to things like stormwater management. Some of these, our responses are just clarifications to where the information they're looking for in the LDO can be found and how those regulations are applied. Many of them relate to stormwater controls that are outside of what we can do in the LDO. And some others, which are very good suggestions related to environmental issues, things like the dark skies, which is a way to kind of minimize light pollution and light trespass, may not be feasible at this time or require kind of more significant alignment with other ordinances. And so they're really not something that we can tackle during this update of the LDO. We've also received some comments on the zoning map. Again, very diligent proofreaders of the zoning map as well, looking at the underlying layer of streets and parcels and corrections to those. We are working to do what we can with the data that we as the zoning consultant are working with. Some of these may be more related to kind of Trenton's GIS data. So we're trying to make sure that we can bring in what we can. There were a couple of changes specifically related to the state of New Jersey recreation and open space inventory and the TOD redevelopment area plans. It's really just an alignment with that. And then we did receive a number of concerns regarding the Hiltonia neighborhood, and we'll go into that in detail in the next item that I'm going to bring up. Also, as is probably familiar to the planning board, the Taylor Design Group did provide a number of comments. They provided a very detailed review of the LDO Draft 2. So essentially, they looked at the PDF version of the LDO from front to back, made recommendations that can help to clarify regulations and resolve inconsistencies. We've identified those. We're going to proceed with those. Again, they're not substantive. They're really just meant to make sure that we're being very consistent in how we apply the LDO and the language that we use. This is a separate document that shows what they've proposed, our responses. It is available from the city, but they also provided a memorandum with some specific recommendations. Some of these are very specific, things like adding a sign band definition, which is the area where you would put a wall sign on a building, basically identifying where you prefer that wall sign to stand. Some additional plant material standards, and some additional clarification on stormwater management. Now, again, we're not managing stormwater in the LDO, but there were some good suggestions there that if that is happening, some standards that we can place within the landscaping section that can help to reinforce things that happen outside in other ordinances. We also received some Brightview engineering comments. They provided a number of comments regarding parking. We've provided some responses clarifying our reasoning, and we'll go through those, as well as how we apply the transportation demand management plan. I know that is something that we've been talking about since the beginning of this process, and so we've done some significant revision to that and really brought that up to speed. And then Attorney McGill, again, a separate memorandum, went through this, made sure that we are aligning with the New Jersey municipal land use law, as well as New Jersey case law. There's a number of changes that will happen there. Again, I don't know that these are necessarily substantive, but they're really just bringing things into alignment with those things to make sure the LDO is as legally sound as it could possibly be. There are two major changes, and we'll go through those. One is the approach to conditional uses, and the other is we had a suggestion to create a zoning determination, which would be kind of the zoning administrator would be making interpretations of LDO provisions based upon how the municipal land use law works and the case law. This is something we don't think is within the purview of the LDO, not allowed really by the state. So it's something that we are proposing to eliminate. Again, as I said, this PowerPoint, which I warned you guys it was going to be very, very short, will be available tomorrow morning, Trenton250LDOupdate.com. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring up a couple of memorandums that we want to go through in a little bit more detail. Again, those will also be available tomorrow to look at in a little bit more detail. I think Michael actually summed this up quite well. What we're doing now, this is really just kind of a graphic illustration of the timeline. We are we're closing out the public review of the second draft of the LDO and the map. As we all know, in this heat, we are in summer. So based upon your comments and the review of these documents, we're going to get ready to prepare the final draft of the LDO and the map, and then that will go through the process that Michael outlined. Really being introduced to council, coming back to the planning board, and then going over to the council again with the hopes of final adoption this year. And so what I will do is bring up the first memorandum. Okay, share. Okay, if I could, hopefully everybody's seeing this. If you're not, somebody shout out. So this will be available tomorrow. But as I said, this is organized in those categories that I spoke about in the PowerPoint. So we did receive some general comments. This is what you see here on this first page. Many are looking to make sure that the planning processes continue, that things continue to, get that high quality of life that's desired within the city of Trenton. Really looking at those are really the responses we received. And this is not atypical for any zoning process. You will get things that are not necessarily related to LDO regulations. Then we did, as I said, received a list of corrections. You can see these here. Many are just corrections in terms of spelling, again, apologies. In terms of addresses, again, apologies. And just some language corrections that may make things more clear. With these, we've proposed to make these corrections. Again, this is not changing anything substantively. It's just really making it easier for somebody to use. And we always appreciate these types of comments. And again, apologize for any errors as hard as we try. We did receive a comment on parking. Cemeteries in particular were singled out as a category where there were a specified number of bike spaces required. If you are, you remember how things are structured in the LDO, many times it's based on gross floor area, square footage. The thing with the cemetery is it's big. And so what we've done in other places and what we're doing here in Trenton is not atypical. We've created a minimum number, and then, basically you can do more than that if you would like. But we really just wanted to keep this kind of as simple as possible, considering the amount of land area a cemetery can take up. Then we did receive a number of comments from the Watershed Institute, as you can see here. The first was great. Where they said, we appreciate and emphasize, we appreciate them appreciating us. So this is great. The next kind of couple of things that you see are really issues that relate to understanding of how the LDO works. So definitions that they are looking for are defined in other places. We've identified things that they would like public right-of-way, view corridor, and bioswale, adding those definitions. These are terms that we do use in the ordinance, and they're very easy to add in a definition. Again, it's not substantive, but it will make it easier for people to use. We clarified how yard functions. So the idea is the yard is, as you all probably know, you're familiar with the LDO. It's the area between the building line and the lot line. There's specific controls that operate there. So we don't see any change needed to be made there. They did make a comment regarding how something should happen within the master plan. As part of this process, we are not amending or touching the master plan. We're not touching Trenton 250. So this is really something that's kind of outside the purview of what we can do. Then there were a number of comments that really talked about how stormwater should be handled. And again, we've done things to try to help with stormwater management, things related to landscaping, things related to, you know, how much building coverage there is. But the actual stormwater management is controlled outside of the LDO. So this is managed in different ordinances. So while we appreciate these comments, and I know the city will kind of keep them in mind as we, you know, as they move forward and perhaps look at the stormwater management ordinance, for the LDO, we really can't tackle these.
Krista?
Yes.
Yep, I'm just going to jump in and say that the city
Sure.
is in the process right now of updating our stormwater management ordinance, partially because the DEP is after me to update our stormwater management ordinance, but we also have had done some considerable work over the past 4 years to get a new stormwater management ordinance. We have a draft plan. We have a draft ordinance. We are updating them based on several updates to New Jersey storm law that were done immediately right after we finished our first draft. And so it's been a pretty big challenge to get things that accommodate both the desires of our planning board that were expressed and the new state standards. But we are working on that. We're hoping to have it done a draft done this fall. So please do be on the lookout for those, and we'll be, you know, including the community in all those discussions as well.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, I mean, this perfectly aligns with the section that we're in. So many of the comments really did relate to stormwater management. And so that is part of something that's a different, bigger project. Again, kind of going through these, we see, again, there are certain things that just asking where definitions are. We've clarified where those can be found. We'll be posting this document online as well, and then assessing that. There were a couple things here that popped up, things like the on-site development standards of the exterior lighting, looking at dark skies. Dark skies is a great approach. But one of the things about it is it's a very complex thing to kind of administer and to put into place right now. So at this time, it's not feasible. We have taken the principles of dark sky and integrated them into our exterior lighting regulations that we have. So we've started the basis for that. And so essentially this can be built upon at a later time to add in more kind of more significant controls on exterior lighting if that is desired. Again, you can see some things here regarding issues like outdoor dining done with pervious surfaces. The LDO does not prohibit many of these things that are desired. Most of them are allowed by the LDO. It's just not a requirement. And making it a requirement at this time can be considered a bit onerous to implement. There was the question that happens about, and you'll see it here, it's this last item here regarding gravel paving. One of the things in an urban environment is that gravel, while it can be something that is pervious and allows water to absorb, over time, gravel gets into your sewer systems. And so this is something that we did not want to touch in the LDO. It's something that many communities prohibit on the basis of that, in particular urban communities, because gravel will go into the sewer system and create bigger problems. And if you're anything like what we've just gone through in Chicago, we had tornadoes and thunderstorms last night. Your sewer systems need to work as best as they possibly can. and your water systems too, the stormwater systems. There is, again, still in the Watershed Institute comments, we do encourage native plantings that is already built into the LDO. And then again, there's a series of stormwater management items that are, again, related to ordinances outside the LDO. So these are things that can be forwarded to that process as that is being updated. Also, tree conservation. We have added in some tree conservation standards here. We've looked at ways to increase the urban tree canopy. So we really don't see the need to make the changes that were recommended. And again, kind of looking at issues of stormwater, obviously the Watershed Institute is very focused on this, again, would be more appropriate for other ordinances. Again, you'll see this is kind of, you're probably hearing me say this over and over again and getting a little bit, it probably seems a little redundant, but again, good suggestions, things that are appropriate, but really need to be controlled through other ordinances. And then finally, some questions. These questions were just clarifications. As you can see, we've provided a response. Really no substantive changes are recommended there. So one of the bigger categories was the zoning map. Again, this first one that you see here, a few corrections on the revised zoning map. If you look at these are very clear about, there's some underlying issues with the base map that basically defines where the roads, begin and end and their names change. This is not substantive to any zoning districts. This is really, we're going to work as best we can to update the zoning map to reflect this, but there may be some bigger issues with the city GIS that we're working with. It's really a technical issue. In particular, there was another lot that was initially designated an open space district, and we want to change it to RM2. The reason for this, which would match the surrounding area, this is because the lot is specifically excluded from the state of New Jersey recreation and open space inventory being prepared for Trenton. So essentially, we just want to align with that inventory. So that's why that OSR, that open space recreation district, will be changed to a residential district. And then WRT is working on the TOD redevelopment area plans. And for a certain area, Ogden and Ewing Street would be better suited to be CMX, which allows kind of the density and matches the surrounding zoning districts. We are making this change again to align with the TOD redevelopment area plans. So we agree with their map change, and this is one of the changes that we want to make. So probably the biggest comment we've received, and as you can tell, it's this big blue comment, and this takes up a number of comments that we've heard, that we received, a few pages. They're all directly related to the Hiltonia neighborhood. So in the current LDO and on the current zoning map as proposed, the area is zoned the RL1. And this is the equivalent zoning category for the current RA district, which is what Hiltonia is zoned now. There is a small area on the north side of Stuyvesant that has been, it's a mix of RL2 and RM1. That really reflects the current uses in the area, but really what we're talking about is the larger, low-density residential part of Hiltonia. In addition, it has some areas that are zoned OS, open space, and institutional. These reflect parks and schools that are already there. So based on the number of comments that we've received, most of which were really based upon the uses allowed in the district, in the Hiltonia neighborhood specifically. But again, remembering that the RL1 district, there's other areas where that may apply. Looking at those, we've made some suggestions in terms of changes that we would like to do to kind of better align with their concerns, as well as better align with what is a single family district. So the first is, so what you see here is a list of the permitted and conditional uses that are allowed within the Hiltonia area, and the changes that we would like to make. The first is bed and breakfast. It is currently proposed as a permitted use. fairly typical for a single family district, but considering how limited the RL1 district is, we propose to make the change to not allow it within the RL1 district. So it would not be a use that's permitted within those areas. Community garden is a permitted use within these districts. We propose to keep that as it is. It is a very innocuous use. It is essentially an area that could be in other RL1 districts set aside for just a community garden, very passive, so we don't propose any change. There are concerns regarding community residences. You may know them also as group homes. They are permitted in the single family districts. This is per federal fair housing regulations. This comes from the big guys, and this is not something that we can prohibit within single family districts. Therefore, we propose no change. This is really something that comes out of the Fair Housing Act and needs to be allowed. Similarly, daycare homes, per the state, this use must be permitted. We have it as permitted now. We don't propose any change. Single family dwelling, quite frankly, makes sense. That's really what it is. The next is educational facility, primary or secondary. So this is grade schools, junior highs. This is a fairly typical use for single family districts. We don't propose any changes. We don't foresee anything happening where things would switch to a school, to a grade school. But really, this is where these are most appropriate. Then we took another look at the live work. This is currently permitted in the RL districts. And upon further evaluation, we really realized that they're generally not appropriate for these areas, that they're really something that's got a little bit more intensity. So our proposal is to take them out of all of the residential low density districts. So this would not be a use that's allowed. We looked at the lodge meeting hall. Again, this is something like a VFW or a Elks Lodge. It's usually typical for a single family district, but understanding that the RL1, which is what the Hiltonia neighborhood is the kind of most low density area in Trenton. We propose to remove that and to not allow those anymore. There is also a medical dental office clinic allowed as a conditional use. Now, this is per city policy, per the community health and wellness plan. This is something to expand access to healthcare. What we wanted to do here, our proposal was, in order to maintain consistency with that city policy, was continue to allow it to be conditional, but in the RL districts to limit it to a maximum gross floor area of 5,000 square feet. Again, to kind of keep it as a local medical clinic. The next is the neighborhood commercial establishment. This is allowed throughout the single family districts and all the other districts as well. And essentially, this is only allowed if the commercial establishment exists as of the date of the LDO. We don't propose any changes because there are, in particular, when kind of looking at the concerns of Hiltonia, none of these uses exist in the area. So therefore, this use can't even establish itself. So essentially, it just kind of continues in the other districts, but doesn't actually happen in the area where the concerns are. In terms of parks, we've always said parks are allowed in all districts. We don't propose any change there. One of the things we did realize is that we do have places of worship as a conditional use. Understanding federal regulations regarding religious protections, you've probably heard the terms RLUIPA. I think even RFRA is still around. We need to make these permitted uses in all of the districts. So essentially, this is one change where it goes from a C to a P to allow them throughout all the different districts. And again, it's the federal protections on religious. A private recreation club. This is something that would be a tennis club, a country club. Again, kind of looking again at the residential low density districts, which would include RL1, which is the majority of Hiltonia. Really seeing what's there and the size of these areas, because the majority of Trenton is not these low density districts. We propose to not allow private recreation clubs in those areas. The same kind of goes for a private social club. The change would be to not allow it in the RL1 as well. There is a provision, and we've cited the use specifically within the LDO, the rooming house, for a senior citizen owner only. This is the rooming house that we are allowing within the city. There is no change to what we've recommended. This is currently allowed by New Jersey state statute. So this is something that, regardless of what the LDO says, would be allowed. Finally, the domestic violence shelter. These are uses that need to kind of locate within residential districts. They are very discreet, in particular to protect the privacy and the safety of those who seek out that shelter. We have kept it as we don't propose any change. We have kept it as permitted. We've seen many times that these can just very seamlessly blend into residential neighborhoods. They really do not want anybody to call any attention to them. They don't want to call any attention to themselves. And so essentially keeping that as a permitted use. And then finally, wireless telecommunications. Considering the concerns of Hiltonia, there's really not the land area for this to happen. Per federal regulations, the Telecommunications Act, and the permissions for these, we don't propose any change. And then finally, what we did want to note is that the RL1, we do have some standards for conversions of existing single family to multiple dwellings. But to convert to the multiple dwellings, those need to be allowed in the district. As the RL1 is only a single family district, no conversions are permitted in those RL1 areas. So I know I just hit you with a lot of information on a line-by-line basis, but we did, as I will show you, receive a number of comments regarding concerns of this neighborhood, and we understand the concerns of a low-density residential neighborhood. These are all related to what I just went through, and we do believe that we've kind of hit a happy medium between the concerns that we've heard, the modifications we can make to uses, to kind of protect what is there. Finally, kind of going through some additional reviews. There is the Taylor Design Group. As I said, they did provide a detailed review of the document. Many of those changes that were presented within that document that we see are good changes. They can resolve inconsistencies. The TDG works with the City of Trenton Planning Board all the time. So these are things that come up. And so really clarifying those we think is beneficial. We don't see any of them as substantive. There is a document available from the city that shows those that we've accepted and the changes that we're going to make. And in addition, TGG did provide us with a memorandum that has specific recommendations. We did review all of that. This will look familiar to you from the PowerPoint, I don't know, maybe a half hour ago, about adding in the sign band, what that means, and where sign placement happens. This is generally for wall signs. It's the area above the first floor, below the second floor, where signs should be mounted. So really defining that and adding some statements regarding that. There were some comments regarding the acceptable plant materials and specifications. We've looked at these standards that were recommended, and we think 1, 3, 4, and 5 are ideal. That can be incorporated into the LDO and really enhance it. And then finally, there were some suggestions regarding stormwater management areas. And so really this, we think these would be beneficial as kind of an additional supplement to anything that happens with stormwater control. Number 1 really wouldn't apply, but number 2 and number 3 can be brought in to look at when stormwater is part of the site, that this would be kind of a landscaping enhancement. And just to finish out this memo, before we go into Attorney McGill's memo, Brightview Engineering did look at the off-street parking and loading. And we did go through their comments. Some of these are just clarifications. There were talks about adding, 18 inches to the stall width to provide hairpin striping. We do not recommend increasing this. The LDO doesn't prohibit this type of design, but really as a requirement, we don't think that we need to do that, in particular how we address parking. Pickup drop-off spaces with 15-minute parking. This is not the scope of the LDO. We don't control how parking areas are controlled, how long somebody can be in a parking area. It's outside the scope of the LDO. The TDM, the Transportation Demand Management Plan, this is really looking at issues of, kind of increasing when a TDM would be required and looking at generating this 25-hour peak hour trips and 50 average daily traffic. This really would increase the amount of projects subject to TDM, which was not the approach that had been started kind of early on in this process. So we don't recommend changing that. The question as to why there is the 15% discount based on parking spaces that are calculated as part of kind of the technical requirements of a TDM, we were taking into account Trenton's built urban form. It's not a suburban area. It is really an area that was, you're one of the most historical cities. It wasn't designed for lots of parking. So we wanted to be realistic about that. And then the next two regarding TDM strategies, we believe that these are clear. We can take another look at them if that's desired, but we believe that these work pretty well and they're part of the TDM evaluation. And then finally, there is a separate memorandum I would like to go over from Attorney McGill. Many of these are just clarifications and alignments with the MLUL. I don't know if everybody wants to, there is one big significant change, which is in the conditional use section. But I would kind of like to take the temperature of the room if you have any comments that you would like to address right now, or I can just keep going right through.
I suggest going right through and we can get to comments and questions after.
Okay, sounds good. All right. So this one's a little bit this is easier. Okay. So we did receive the memorandum. We received a memorandum from Attorney McGill, who is the planning board attorney, with a number of different things. What you're going to see as we scroll through this is the majority of them are either language clarifications that better align us with the MLUL, or certain things that would just specifically align us with the MLUL. So many of these, and they focus mainly not so much on kind of the planning policy aspect of things, but on the administrative side of things. And so with this, what we're really just doing is just making sure that everything is working and is legally defensible. So, as you kind of, and I'm not going to go point by point to this, I'm just going to hit the really big ones. Many of these are just language clarifications. This memorandum as well will be posted to the website, but you can see, again, luckily somebody caught a typo, so we're going to have to correct those. So there were a couple of those that were caught here. Again, these are alignments with the MLUL, how these things would work. Again, these are really administrative and applicability related, and corrections to the reference. We will make these changes. Again, community residents. This is the definition from the MLUL. This is one of the ones that's a term that's used. It's one of our uses. We just kind of talked about it a little bit in the previous memo. We will make sure that we align it with this definite. We will basically use this definition so that we are not in violation of anything that the state says. So this is all this kind of italicized language that you see here. And then conditional uses. So what we realized was initially we had proposed, we do have some conditional uses that have standards, but then we had created a set of kind of more general conditional use standards that talk about kind of how we would, if the use was conditional, that it would kind of meet these more general standards that would apply to any conditional use. And upon review and upon looking at both the MLUL and looking at New Jersey case law, This wasn't going to fly, essentially, is what happened. So I think this is the biggest change that you will see. We want to align. We want to make sure that everything is, in line with what is required. And so this is essentially some changes we've proposed. What we've highlighted here are the conditional uses that we had as conditional that were subject to a series of very general standards, but not standards specific to that use. And so we took a look at each of those. So there are other conditional uses in the ordinance, but these are the ones that kind of triggered that legal flag, flag on the play basically happening. So I'm just going to go through these. We just did it with the Hiltonia issue. We'll kind of go through these here. We looked at alternative correctional facility. We had made that conditional. This is basically an area that a home that's alternative to incarceration as dictated by the courts. Because it's only in an institutional district, which would be kind of protected by the other uses in the institutional district, our recommendation is to change it to permitted, no longer be conditional. In looking at an indoor amusement facility within the commercial Main Street area, we think it's appropriate to have that just be permitted. Again, other standards apply: landscaping, parking, performance standards. Those are all part of any use that happens, but we think that would work well. Within the amusement facility outdoor, in the CMX, and the mixed use transition, to switch those to permitted, we think it's appropriate for that to happen there. For animal shelter, we find it is conditional in the IMU. There are standards already in place for animal care. We really think we can transition those over to the IMU. For the body modification establishment, which was conditional in that Main Street district, that we thought that basically on the prevalence of these, that these could be permitted. Things like a community center, where we were trying to be a little bit more kind of maybe evaluate on a case-by-case basis, but knowing the value of a community center, it could be permitted in those residential districts that you see there. Similar to the alternative correctional, a drug treatment clinic. Being in the institutional district, this is appropriate for these types of uses, so that would change to permitted. A heavy retail, rental, and service. If you think about this, this would be your big Home Depot that's got kind of outdoor storage going on, outdoor service going on, so you can rent a truck, you can go to their garden center. That perhaps it is not appropriate in the commercial mixed use, and that it is appropriate as a P, as a permitted in the industrial mixed use district as well. Light industrial, initially we had it as conditional in the IMU, or in the TOD, I apologize, in the TOD area. And that was really to address the Roebling complex. But what we realized was we didn't really need to do that because it would be part of the TOD redevelopment area plan. So putting it in as conditional is no longer really needed because it's addressed through redevelopment area plan provisions, as it were. For medical dental office, this is probably deja vu from about 15 minutes ago. Looking at creating standards in the low density residential and low density, or in the medium density, create standards to keep them small in scale. So that would be why they would be conditional. Changing a movie studio from conditional to permitted in the TOD, because that really would be something that would work. I think the thing that you probably picked up on a theme here, needle exchange facility, again, only in the institutional and only as a permitted, it would be a permitted use, but it's similar. The institutional district is one of those districts that kind of protects itself. We do have conditional uses for nightclubs in the different districts. We have done research and looked at a number of standards that we can look at regarding noise and loitering and security. And so essentially create conditions for those. For parking lot and parking structure, those can reference the standards for the design of parking facilities in the LDO that are present already. So we see those kind of tying together, and we think those would work. Talked again about place of worship. again, based on religious protections throughout the country, and just kind of the case law that's there, making those permitted throughout the various districts that also allow for different types of assembly. As we talked about, removing private recreation clubs from the low-density residential districts. And the other districts, we can add in some standards that would allow them to be considered the medium density and the high density, really making sure that we control those. And then kind of the last few ones, public works facility, just allowing it. I mean, this is a city facility, allowing it in the mixed use transition as permitted. Research and development, which is a good thing to have. It's an industry that many cities are desiring, changing those to permitted. Allowing for in the light industrial for retail goods establishments to happen, so changing that from conditional to permitted. And then retail sales of alcohol, that was conditional in the commercial Main Street, rather than kind of completely eliminate it to allow it as a permitted use, just kind of based on kind of the way that things shake out. So that is probably the biggest one within these comments. Again, some typos that we will correct. We do need here, you can see here, temporary uses. There are two of them that really need clarification. One is for farmers markets and one is for food trucks. We will look at clarifying the time frame for farmers markets, basically keeping it as it is, but making how that works very clear. And then looking at food trucks to limit the permit to 30 days, but allowing for renewal. Again, these are on private property. The LDO is not dealing with a farmer's market in a street or food trucks on the street. This is if somebody in their private parking lot would like to have a food truck. So we would basically add some standards that take the subjectivity out and make them more objective. As we kind of continue to go through these, you can see here that there's some where there's no change after we confirm with the attorney. There's some alignments that need to happen, some corrections. One of the other ones here, the grant of a use variance, appeals of a grant of a use variance may go to council. Really the idea here is that it probably is more appropriate to go to Superior Court, so we can basically make that change, which is kind of in line with many of the other communities that we work with. We think that is a good change. Others here are clarifications or alignments. Again, we'll post this memo so you can read through it. And then I think the last is clarifying destruction for nonconformities, essentially making sure that aligns with what the MLUL says. So really, we're kind of hemmed in on a lot of these. This is basically what the state has decided are the rules. We just want to make sure that they're the rules. And then the zoning determination. That is one of those things where we have said that basically the zoning administrator can make an interpretation of the ordinance. It's not a yes or a no question. It's, I think this is what this is. Because of the way case law has worked out and the MLUL, this is not something we can allow to happen in the zoning, in the land development ordinance. And so essentially we're going to have to kind of take that out of the LDO. And again, that is to align with the way that the state and others operate. So I have hit you all with a lot of information. And so we're very happy. Chris Jeanette, also, who has been working on this from the beginning, is also here, and we are happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you. So just so everyone knows the order of things, I'm gonna start with board members, comments and questions, and then board consultants, city staff, council members, and then lastly, but most importantly, the public. If you have a comment or question, can you please raise your Teams hand? There should be a hand symbol on top of your screen with the word raise below it. And besides the order that I mentioned, I'll call on people in the order that they appear on the side on my Teams screen. If You can also type your question in the chat, although in the past you had some issues with not everyone being able to see it. It might be fine, but you can also type it in the chat and we'll get to the chat questions after the hand raised questions. And I know a lot of this information can be very technical, but I encourage everyone to ask whatever question you have. No question is too simple to ask. So first, any board members have comments or questions? Randy, your hand is up.
Yes, I raised my hand, Jones. Arista, I made all of my comments mostly focused on open space on the map, on the LDO map, because I'm a landscape architect and that's what I do and that's what I can recognize and understand and work with. How were they addressed and how was that recorded that they were addressed? In other words, I questioned certain things were listed as open space and certain open spaces that were not listed, that were not indicated on the map. Is there some document that I can look at to just understand how they were addressed, how those issues were addressed?
I will turn to Chris and Michael a bit on that. I know some of them, if you look, I know, Randy, that we've gotten very specific comments on open space from you, and we've made changes to the map based on those comments. On the website, based on the March 2023 release, there is both the zoning map and the areas of change map, in which you can identify areas that were changed. Chris, I'm going to lean on you a little bit.
I can answer that, Arista. So if you go
Okay.
to the map that on the website that it indicates areas of change, and I can put that on the screen. I can actually why don't I go put it on the screen right now? It's a good idea.
Okay.
So I'm going to share my screen so everybody can take a look at what I'm seeing what I'm seeing. So I'm going to our website, Trenton50LDOupdate.com. Pops up immediately because I'm a good little boy who checks my LDO update page. I go to this updated draft zoning map indicating area of change. When this comes up, at first, if you look at it, it doesn't pop out, but once you zoom in a little bit, you start seeing these areas in black highlight over here. That indicates everywhere where you see a black boundary around a parcel, that's a change. So you're going to see all over the map these changes. So over here, this is open space. Over here, this is open space. Open space, open space, open space. Lots of new open space over here. This one over here was one that we took. Once we got the list of parcels from Leah, we made the adjustment. I think there's one parcel here that got converted to residential from open space, and that was to align with what you guys had submitted to us. More open space over here. I know you were concerned down here. This parcel over here is now open space.
What's that little white blip, Michael? I'm curious.
Arista, we may need to double check on this one. This should be open space over here. I'm not sure if this is a parcel.
I think that was the issue. Yeah.
Yeah, this isn't a parcel over here.
Yeah,
and
Michael, just to jump in, this is Christian at Camiros. Yeah, anything that you're seeing that's white there isn't a parcel in the city's data. And it's our policy as the consultants, we don't create a parcel that don't exist in the city's data. Because we don't want to be creating land for private ownership that's not actually land for private ownership. So if you see a white spot there, it's because there's no parcel there according to the map.
Okay. Good. Michael, I would ask that you send me a link because I'm not a good little boy and I don't go to my LDO map on a regular basis, but I think I can more than likely find it on the city website. If I have a problem, I'll call you.
Yeah, it is not on the city website. That is the big thing. The website for everybody is Trenton250 LDOupdate.com.
Okay, then send a link.
Yep.
I didn't write that down.
I will do that.
I can put it in the chat right now, too.
It's in the chat already, I think. Maybe
Okay.
earlier. Yeah.
So this is our map. Do you
And
let me know
thank
if
you
you want me
for
to
that,
keep,
Michael.
you guys can let me know if you want me to keep this up for the moment, or if you want me to, why don't we do that? Why don't we actually take a quick look at the map changes as well? So everybody can see them. That is a part of our process. So over here on the school, this over here has been changed from open space to institutional, as more appropriately reflecting what's there. This over here is now RH1 over here. I know this is the fun part of the meeting where we get to play with maps. Just scanning over here. Open space, open space, open space. Open space. Open space.
Bring me to Battle Monument Park, Michael.
Sure.
There it is.
So over in this area, this is a big change. This was commercial area before. We went through this and decided that this is more appropriate now as RH2, as better reflects the area over here. RH2, if you'll remember, does permit a certain amount of commercial in it, but the focus is on residential, and then to allow commercial uses that are aligned with those residential uses to be permitted. So this is RH2. This is RH1 over here. This parcel right over here was changed to commercial Main Street to align with the rest of the strip along Broad Street. So I'm going to go up first. We'll go up to North Trenton, and then we'll come down. So no changes over there. No changes over there. Up, and then we'll come back down.
Michael, what is the green strip you just hovered over a moment ago?
This?
Yes.
That is, I think that's where is that the canal over there?
Yeah, that's the canal.
Okay. And where it's not shown as green, is it underground? Is that what you're?
I think that's right. I think that's
Where
correct.
Okay.
Where it's not green, I think, is where it goes through that residential section downtown.
Sort of out along Route 1 now, I think, but okay.
Yeah. So I'll go back over here a little bit. New open space over here. I think we scrolled right a little bit. So open space, we talked about this over here. Okay. A lot of changes over in this area. This is Hugh and Carroll, and this is Hugh and Carroll, right?
Maybe a bigger screen.
Where am I? So this over here was changed. Oh, this is Walnut. So this over here was changed to reflect the changes to the redevelopment area plan that was approved a while ago. So we basically taken this over here up to RM2 to provide just a little bit more density over here. And the RM2 district is kind of a medium density district. So it does not permit multifamily housing, but it does permit 2-family and row home style housing. But the RM2 does allow for that residential focused commercial as well. So the idea is that as we're getting closer to the train station, we're getting a little bit more dense over here and allowing for more commercial uses. And this was something that was actually requested by several people in their comments to us. This over here, down here, reflects changes to the redevelopment area plan as well for something a little bit more intense use over here. So this is residential, high density residential 2. This is RM2 over here, and we did make changes over here to reflect the open space that's in the new redevelopment area plan. This over here was an error before. This was this building was incorrectly marked as TOD1 and should be TOD2. RH1 over here, RH2 over here. This is the park over here, and we really worked a lot to make sure we got this one right. This over here is the the stadium, the baseball stadium, and the riverfront plaza area. What we did with this area is that we made this RMX, and that is a riverfront mixed use district. So this is similar. We took basically what we made a decision is the most appropriate use is similar to what we have further up here in the area that doesn't exist yet for, I should talk about this one as well. So this parcel over here is part of the proposed, what would be created out of the Route 29 project when Route 29 is moved. We've decided to make this RMX for now. Eventually, we believe that this will be park, but the reason that we're making this RMX right now is that we don't want, this is going to have to be realigned and we're going to have to have a new grid in here as part of the city. And we didn't want anything that is perceived as being taken away from park when it's not park yet. So what's going to happen is that once we have a Route 29 project and we have a land use study and we have a new grid, then we can take the new parcels and correctly identify which ones are going to be open space over here. So this is intended to be over open space. We just don't have the exact boundaries of that open space over here. So that's why it's RMX for now to fit in with the rest of the district. We took that same riverfront mixed use district. This is a very high intensity district over here, but the idea is to have something that highlights the waterfront so that it's highest density away from the waterfront and then gets lower density as you approach it. But it is a high density mixed use district, and that's what's there right now. So we decided after going through that this is the most appropriate use for the stadium and for the offices over here. I'm going to scroll up right now. We looked at that. Yeah, we looked at all this already. So let me scroll a little bit further right and go down. This is all the same. We missed a parcel of park over here or open space. Let me go over here. One thing that I want to clarify for people is that open space on this map does not necessarily mean that it is currently a park. What it means is that open space can also mean that it is a cemetery. It can also be for a golf course, certain things like that. So it doesn't mean that it's a designated park. But this parcel over here, for example, is a very, very complicated parcel because there's a lot of different uses on that parcel. But what we decided is that at the end of the day, being so close to the river, we don't want to permit a whole lot more development over here. We don't want to permit a lot of changes over here. It's not going to be sustainable. It's not going to be very resilient. So we think that we want to maintain this as an open space parcel. Even if there are some opportunities for development, we don't think it's a good idea over here. So we've just taken the whole parcel and made it open space. Anything that's existing within here, so there are businesses that are existing in here. There are industries that are existing in here. Those don't get affected for their current use. Those are existing non-conforming uses that will be allowed to continue, but they would have to go to the zoning board for any expansion of that use, because the zoning board is going to have to take a hard look at whether any expansion over there is advisable given the future resilience challenges along the Delaware River.
And Michael, can I add one more thing?
Sure.
Regarding open space and parks, parks are allowed throughout all of the districts. So even if they are not marked as open OSR or open space district within this map, they are still allowed in all the other districts. So you may have smaller parks or kind of small things that are within the other districts that are parks. They are permitted use and they are allowed to, and they continue and new ones can be formed if somebody wanted to make a park. But just to say that these are trying to grab kind of the larger open space areas in the city.
Do you guys want me to stop sharing now? Let's do that for now. We can come back to it if anybody has any questions about the map.
Thank you, Michael. Any other board members have comments or questions? Do any board consultants, city staff, or council members have questions, comments?
I don't.
Okay, then we'll get to the public. Let's see. First up, Becky Taylor. You have a comment or a question?
Hi, this is Becky. I'm sorry, I actually hit that button to raise my hand mistakenly, and of course, I've been listed there, so thank you for coming to me
Okay.
first. All I can say is I am a Hiltonia resident. I moved here 5 years ago. And I did that after having lived in other parts of the county and feeling like I wanted to support Trenton, where I have worked in several jobs in my career because I love the city. I am not going to say a whole lot here because I wasn't prepared to. I'm going to defer to my other Hiltonia leaders. But I am a little flabbergasted, frankly, by how you are potentially totally changing what this neighborhood is. And it scares me. And I'm um, I'm not going to say anything more. I'm going to ask Linda Reed, Jeannie Weekliam, Kathy Eckert, Lily Nazajev, and Maureen LaBelle, who I know are here too, to speak when they are able to. I'm just concerned about the future of this wonderful neighborhood. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, Lily. You're muted.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes. I posted a comment, which I see you've recorded in your collection of all the comments, the Hiltonia and the new RL1 district. I guess overarching, I will leave it to others to make overarching claims. One question is that it seems a principle from the way you're operating is that there's one type of low residency district, RL1, and you want to have univocal across the city, all the RL1s. So I think in Hiltonia, we're concerned about the way in which the RL1 might not really meet the existing nature. And I appreciate the changes you've made in response to the comments, but I wanted to get to the specific list, although I don't have it in front of me, the slide, I don't have the slides where Arista went over the specific responses to RL1 from the Hiltonia comments. Would you mind posting that again? Because
Yeah, we're gonna go to it.
They're not numbered, but they were asterisked, I believe, Arista.
Yeah, I can pull that up right now.
That would help, because I have a couple of questions, and I don't know if my neighbors would have the same questions. But I'm going to just skip to couple of them. For educational facility, you're not going to make a change. That's typical use for single family districts. But I'm not understanding what kind of argument that is to say it's typical. I feel that would change the nature of the neighborhood if someone wanted to sell their home or a couple of homes and create it into a school. In what sense is that? I don't understand the reasoning behind why that should be permitted, just because it's typical in some single family districts. Could you say more about that, Arista?
Yes. I mean, if you're looking at perhaps a kind of significantly larger educational facility, primary or secondary, many times you can see it. And as we did, change some areas to the institutional district. But in most single family districts, because, the students live around the schools, that is why you see permissions for primary or secondary schools. Now, if there isn't one in your current neighborhood, it's really going to be, it's really not seen that, somebody would buy up significant enough land area to create a grade school in your neighborhood. So it's just something that for those other areas that do have primary and secondary schools in place, allowing that use to be within the neighborhoods, which is where the students are coming from.
Well, I would see you would want to grandfather any schools that exist in residential neighborhoods. But I don't see why we would permit additional schools in our residential neighborhood. It seems like that's something I think would change the we have schools very nearby. We have public schools. We have a charter school right on the perimeter of our neighborhood. So I just don't understand why we can't just leave that one out too. In other words, not permit that. That would be my personal opinion. But I'll go on to the others. The ones that the medical dental clinic. The reasoning for leaving that conditional. But can you again, per city policy? Well, can you say a little bit more about city policy?
Yes,
It's not a
I'd like.
requirement, right? That every
Ye-
neighborhood allow clinics,
Yes.
like every single neighborhood? Is that a requirement?
Yes, so I can address that. So this, as part of the city's community health and the city of Trenton passed a community health and wellness plan. It is the first adopted community health and wellness plan that has been adopted in the state as an element of our master plan. In our community health and wellness plan, we specifically adopted a policy of permitting medical facilities in all districts. And the reason for that is we have an absolute crisis in the city of Trenton in terms of the number of doctors' offices that are allowed in our city. We have a massive shortage of accessible medical facilities. At the same time, it is very, very, very common for doctors' offices to be allowed in all kinds of suburban style home districts. This is very common in single family home districts. We have doctors' homes that have operated in Berkeley Square. We have doctors' offices that have operated in many places in West Trenton without a problem. I grew up in the middle of the suburbs, and we had multiple doctors' offices in cul-de-sac neighborhoods, and they were fine. We really have a priority here for getting those doctor offices here in the city of Trenton. We don't feel that changes the character of the neighborhood, particularly if you limit the size of the doctor's office. We are not talking about having big doctor's office parks, but it is very common to have doctor's offices in individual single-family home-sized buildings. And we want those here. We need to have these facilities in the city of Trenton, or the city of Trenton residents are not going to have access to doctors, and that's our concern.
But you feel it has to, I mean, the policy is to allow them generally, but it doesn't seem to entail that we have to permit them in this particular district.
We want them in all districts. We want to provide doctors with as much opportunity as they can to choose where they feel that their business belongs in the city of Trenton, and to allow them here. We don't want to turn doctors away from our city.
Well, they have plenty of other opportunities in the city, but the other issue is, even so, 5,000 square feet is quite large for our neighborhood. It's very large. Is there any concession on lowering that size?
That one I'll take other guidance on from others. For me, it's 5,000 square feet in Holtonian. It doesn't seem like that big a building.
It's a big building. That's a big building. That's a big home.
That's a big home. I have a very large home. It's
that's the thing, is that there are a lot of very big homes in Holtonia.
Not 5,000 square feet. Do you live in Hiltonia?
I do not.
Okay, then put the doctor's office in your neighborhood.
I would love a doctor's office in my neighborhood. I'm
Well, then
begging
put
for a
it
doctor's
there.
office in my neighborhood.
Put 5,000 square feet in your neighborhood.
It's up to where the doctor wants to go and where it's more abstract concept.
Because 5,000 square feet is very big for this neighborhood. There are large homes here, but 5,000 square feet is large.
Well, there's a couple other things to keep in mind. We've put a limitation on the maximum size of the building, but it all also is contingent on meeting other standards within that apply to a medical office. So there are parking standards, there are landscape standards, there are building coverage standards. So while that could be the maximum size, it's not necessarily what you would see.
I don't want to cut you off. I don't know you, and I don't mean to be rude, but it just seems like you're picking on our neighborhood. I don't know you. I don't know any of you, but it just seems like you're picking on the neighborhood. You're going to change the landscape of Hiltonia, and you don't live here.
I agree.
I think that's our general concern, Anita, right, of the neighbors. Can I just go on with the place?
They're not, there's only a few neighborhoods in Trenton that have held up, and now you're gonna change them.
The whole neighborhood.
So I want to say first things. First of all, several of the uses that are here are not changes. I think that there's a perception that they are and they are not. One of the things, so I'll give you some examples. I think in some of the.
Wait, I'm not done. I'm not done. I'm not done.
Excuse me,
Okay.
you
pay a
weren't
lot of
called on,
taxes
Ms.
here.
Weekliam. You were not called on to speak.
I don't care.
You should care. We have a process.
School. I
You
don't
other
care.
people raise their hands before you.
Okay,
to
I'll raise
speak.
okay, you know what? Okay, sir, I don't know you. Oh, okay. I need to get off this meeting before I start going
Would you
off.
like to raise your, I see your hand is raised, but it's raised after other people.
Okay, whatever, dude.
I'll just continue. Anita, if you could raise your hand, I won't take up much more time.
Lily, if you would like to continue.
Because they getting on my nerves already.
You
They just
said
want to change their little neighborhood.
per federal regulations, this use must be permitted. Can you clarify? The federal regulations require us to allow building of churches and places of worship for every district? For
Yes, that's
every
right.
district?
George, do you want to talk about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, basically, you can't discriminate against people. Places of worship are permitted in all. So, that's
Even
basically.
totally residential neighborhoods?
You can't. Yeah, right. And to get to the school issue, schools are generally thought of as what's known as inherently beneficial uses. So, even if they were excluded, they would have the right to come in and ask for what's known as a use variance. So it's really kind of futile to exclude schools from residential zones. So right, there's a federal act that prohibits discrimination against practices of religion, and I'm getting some feedback, so I'm sorry, but yeah, generally you can end up getting sued if you prohibit churches.
Yeah, I would rather that the ordinance not permitted and let them, as you said, apply for variance. That's more keeping with preserving the neighborhood. The other final thing I'll say, because I know my neighbors, a lot of people are waiting to ask, is the rooming house. Again, the way that's worded, rooming house, senior citizen only, this is currently allowed by New Jersey statute. Do you mean to say this is required by New Jersey statute or allowed? Because if it's just allowed, doesn't mean we should permit it.
So this is required.
Sorry, go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, this is required by New Jersey state law. It is also permitted in our zoning ordinance. It has been permitted in our zoning ordinance for the past at least decade, since the 2010 zoning ordinance. This is not a change in our zoning ordinance. If you go to the current zoning, I can show you right now. Let me do that.
All right. No, I don't want to take up the time. I'll take your word for it. It's unfortunate, though. I just think it's unfortunate. That's all. I'll ask. I'm monopolizing the time, so I will. Go to the next person.
Thank you. And before we go to the next person, just one comment I want to make. I know it can seem a bit daunting to see all these uses on a list in relation to a specific neighborhood, but certainly they're not all going, and change tends to happen slowly. And just because something is permitted does not mean that it will be there. There's not going to be 10 schools there tomorrow, or even in 10, 20, 30, it's a very, for better or worse, a slow process. Okay. Austin, you're up.
There we go. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, pleasure. Good evening, everyone. Attorney Austin Edwards here, specifically speaking on the Trenton NAACP. And I got good news that I'm actually a Mill Hill resident, so I won't beat you guys up about Hiltonia. But yeah, just wanted to speak about the entire master plan. A few comments. I think that this plan really does have the potential to transform Trenton into something that's thriving and like a really vibrant city. But there are some issues that we need to address with that as well. Starting off with what's good, I think the plan is fairly comprehensive. Addresses a wide range of issues, housing issues, economic development, education, arts and culture. It's very forward-facing and vocal about some of the issues that are currently facing Trenton, and it also specifically speaks about the challenges that Trenton is facing, not just today but in the future, and tries to find ways of addressing that. So definitely appreciating that. The problem I have is that the plan doesn't really address very specific issues, right? For example, housing, right? I think Trenton has a serious housing issue. Many people live, unfortunately, in substandard conditions. And it's not outwardly facing of the potential for gentrification, right? A lot of Trentonians feel, and they're worried about this plan, that they don't want to be kicked out of their homes or their city, right? It doesn't, the plan overall, I've seen a lot of suggestions, but it doesn't have any specifics as to you must do's, right? So it doesn't address those issues or give details about how those issues will be addressed. And in regards to economic development, I know that the plan wants to create more jobs and attract new businesses, but again, same problem. It doesn't specify how that is going to happen, right? Always give suggestions, but this isn't necessarily binding or gives specific steps as to what will happen. In the point regarding community outreach, it seems like the plan was created, I'm not familiar with the specific design company or the consultants that were working on this. Give you guys props for reaching out to, different community organizations like 4Cs, but overall in the city of Trenton, most people don't feel like they know about what's happening in the 250 plan. They feel like, all right, it's changed over time. We don't know what the this year or this month change is going to be. So if I could make a suggestion that moving forward in this process, you guys start community boards, right? Make sure that these boards are led, staffed, and very transparent who are on these boards to ensure that people in Trenton feel like they're a part of the process and really are engaged with it. I think everybody wants the city to be better. It's just the process that has happened so far. Knowing people feel like they're in the dark and they don't want to feel that way. So just to sum it up, make sure that the plan moving forward increases the availability of affordable housing, promotes economic development in a way that specifically benefits all Trentonians, ensuring that the plan is implemented in a way that's very transparent and accountable to the community. I believe that the 250 plan really does have the potential to be a blueprint for a better Trenton, but it's up to us to make sure that the plan is implemented in a way that benefits all Trentonians. I appreciate you guys didn't have a question, just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Michael or Alyssa, do you want to respond or should we?
I would just say that for today, we're really focused on the land development ordinance specifically. So we're not really looking at the Trenton 250 plan today. This is the manifestation of the land use ordinance, of the land use plan within the Trenton 250 ordinance. But this is really regulatory. This is looking at what is permitted in any particular district. We are not looking today at what the overall plan is for any of these districts. We will be doing updates for the Trenton 250 master plan later on. I think that you're going to see a lot of the implementation items in the TOD redevelopment areas when they come out in September. So we'd love to have you back to look at those with us and to talk about how we are really going to be implementing strategies in our neighborhoods to improve the city of Trenton.
All right, just let me know the date and I'll see you.
We are looking at September the 14th at the planning board.
All right, Mike, you get to see my beautiful face again.
And just to add one other thing to that is that in implementing Trenton 250, the master plan, the LDO is only one component. So this is, as Michael said, dealing with the land use and the regulations. There are other initiatives, other things happening that will help to implement other policies of that. So I just want to say, because the LDO can't do all of the lifting. It's just not its purview. So there's more stuff coming, and we hope you come to those meetings.
Don't threaten me with a good time now, all right?
Okay, next is, looks like there's more than one person who's guest, but I'll start with the one whose name is just single guest. Yes, do you have a comment or question? We can always come back if someone has technical issue
Are
or
you
something.
going from the bottom of the list or the top of the list?
Top of the list.
I'm showing I'm on the top.
I'm seeing guests, but if there's no guest speaking now, Jeannie, you're welcome to speak.
Okay, thank you. This is Jeannie Wakelam. I'm the former president of the Hiltonia Association. I really wonder why you can't carve out this neighborhood as a special zoning area. The fact doctors' offices will come in here and it's going to cause a problem because it's right on the edge of Trenton and they'll be like, I'm in Trenton, and they're going to destroy this neighborhood. I don't care if the city passes an ordinance or now, it should not be an allowable thing, nor should a daycare center. And there's plenty of space over by Kilmer School and in other areas to do that. This is a unique neighborhood. It's one of the only neighborhoods that's been kept up. Are they allowing doctors' offices in Glen Afton?
Yes.
Yeah. I take you trying to simplify the zoning is why you're making it all R1 everywhere. But this has historically been a uniquely zoned area with lots of rules, and that's why it stayed the way it has. And there are 5,000 square foot homes over here. So it would be possible for a doctor to take one over. And the other thing is we have zoning laws that currently are not being enforced. There are houses here that the city has ignored complaints about that have been made into apartments. There are boarding houses and they've ignored all of those complaints. So I suggest that they act on the complaints they receive and find the owners, because Trenton has been destroyed by Lakewood landlords. People are living in squalor in neighborhoods. And by you simplifying these zonings and making everything available, you're just going to deteriorate the city. That's all I have. Thank you.
I do want to respond. You mentioned daycare home as a permitted use. This is a requirement of the state of Trent, of the state of New Jersey. So in all residential districts in the state of New Jersey, a daycare home can be permitted in a single family home. This is not a change from our current LDO or LDO. This has been permitted in the city of Trenton for at least 20 years. So this is not a change in the LDO.
It's not permitted in this neighborhood.
It is absolutely permitted right now in this neighborhood. Has always been. It is required by state law. And I can show.
I understood.
So I'll be happy to bring up the current zoning ordinance and we can take a look.
Okay.
So this is what I'm bringing up. So if this is the current existing zoning ordinance for the city of Trenton. This is the zoning ordinance that was adopted in 2010. If we go do a search in this ordinance, where's my search facility? Daycare. So,
Michael,
yes.
Michael, it's required by state statute 40:55-65.5B. Now that's the site for it. It's family daycare homes permitted in all residential districts. So it's not really it's not discretionary on the part of Trenton whether we allow daycare centers in your community or your neighborhood or anybody else's neighborhood. It's an absolute requirement, and that's correct. Done by the state. That's not done by Trenton. So
I just want
I'll just say certain
Yeah.
things are within our control and certain things are not. And that's one of the things that are not. So.
But I just wanted to show 315-241 in our current land development ordinance as well, family daycare homes. Family daycare homes may be conducted in a private dwelling unit subject to the following, and these are the state requirements: no more than 5 children up to the age of 6 years old, private residence in which 3 to 5 children, not counting the children legally related to the caregiver. This is the current requirements right now, and this is in all districts.
Okay, I think I'm more concerned about commercial daycare, like Goddard School, that sort of thing coming in.
Commercial,
That-
yeah, go on.
You know.
Commercial,
Home.
commercial daycare is commercial daycare, larger commercial daycare units are a separate use in this ordinance, and they are not permitted in your district.
Okay, okay.
Those are permitted by law, by state law, in all commercial districts, but not in residential districts. So they are not permitted in our lower density residential districts.
Okay.
And on that point, even if something is permitted, there might be additional requirements either through the zoning or, as Michael is showing, daycare has to, a maximum number of children, or it doesn't, in some doctor's office, doesn't mean doctor's office could come in and build any kind of building or have any kind of, any kind of doctor's office, there's more restrictions add on to it that might not be obvious from looking at the zoning map.
Yeah. While we're here, I just want to show you where rooming house is right now, because I think it's relevant to the discussion. So senior, it's under senior if I look it up.
The people are not seniors, I'll tell you that much.
I think it's age 65. 65. I'm just talking about the rooming houses that are permitted in terms of the zoning ordinance that we provided. Where is it in this current ordinance? It's going to take me a little bit while to find. So why don't I stop sharing and I'll find it in here, and then we can come back to this.
Okay. Jeannie, do you have any other comments or questions?
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Next, DeConti Elliott.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I am also a resident of Hilltonia. I'm fairly new to the subject, so I am happy that I did join the meeting today. Just to kind of, I think you may have kind of answered the question that I had. So going back to the talk about the doctor offices and the schools, right? You did mention that there's other requirements that may be needed. Is there a way for us to see these other requirements? Because we could go back and forth, about a school being here or about a doctor's office, that the homes may have the square footage, but what are the other requirements? So that we can, kind of determine if this is something that may ever happen. I don't know if I'm making sense, but is there a way for us to see these other requirements, or is just,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Arista, can you bring up the design standards of the residential in the RL1 district?
I mean, I can, but I think kind of it's almost a larger issue, and I'm happy to do that. To your point that you were talking about, the other things that apply. If you go to, again, the Trenton 250 LDO update, you can see the full draft 2 ordinance. So when you establish any use, as you look through that ordinance, you're going to see there is a parking section that applies that has kind of looks at how parking needs to be designed. There is a landscape section that builds in things like buffer yards around residential uses. Standards regarding even things like accessory structures and permitted encroachments. If you look in the RL1 district standards, you'll see there's minimums that need to happen. So things like an 8,000 square foot lot, a building coverage requirement that's fairly tight because it is a single family district. So anything that wants to come in terms of, and we've made some changes here, of uses that we're not allowing, but the uses that are still continued to be allowed. allowed. They have to meet all of those. So the LDO doesn't just work on the uses allowed in the district, have at it. It's got to meet the district standards. It's got to meet the standards of the use. It's got to meet the standards related to its site development, which would be things like parking and landscape. All of those things work together. So that's why the document's actually a pretty hefty document of a couple hundred pages, because there's all these different things that work for the site. So essentially, if I can't put together enough land to make everything work, I can't put my use down there. I would have to ask for 1,000 variances, at which point there is the public process to hear what those variances are. If you've got uses in here that are conditional, the public is allowed to come out and talk about, their, concerns regarding the uses that are in place. I don't know that we specifically have standards for the design of, say, something, an educational facility within a residential district, aside from the siting standards. But there are all those other things that they have to comply with.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense. That kind of answers my question. I just wanted to know where we can possibly go to look to see the other standards and everything like that, just to kind of, because I've been a Trenton resident all my life. I've been in Hiltonia for about 4 years. I've lived, in other parts of Trenton, and I really do take pride in my neighborhood, being a Hiltonia resident and having what we have here. So to kind of see it possibly being disrupted. And I don't know if that's, the best word to use, but to see, I don't know how I feel if I see a doctor's office or anything like that. And I know that we do have them other places within Trenton. And I can think of other places that they will possibly be great at on West State. They have the 5,000 square foot homes. They have probably the round driveway for the parking. They have all of that. So seeing it certain areas, it looks good. It looks like it belongs there. I just honestly can't imagine it being in Hiltonia, but I do appreciate the information and being able to go to those documents to see if, our properties do meet the other requirements and standards. So thank you for that.
Arista, do you think it would be beneficial real quickly just to go over the table of contents for the LDO to show where everything is?
Sure, I can do that. Give me one moment. Okay. There we go. So as you look through this is the draft. It is on, again, Trenton 250 LDO update. The address is in the chat as well. That show. So when you look at this, what you're seeing is a number of different things. So you start to see here, if we are talking about Hiltonia and the RL1 district, it's the main standards are sitting here in the residential districts. You may see the single family dwelling conversions. This is not applicable to the RL1. It is not applicable to Hiltonia based on how this is structured. But you can see things here regarding on-site green space, exterior lighting, accessory structures and uses, permitted encroachments, a whole requirement of parking standards, whole requirement of landscape standards, whole series of requirements regarding signs. And then the administrative section that really looks at kind of how things are, whether you're looking for a variance or a conditional use, how those come into play as well. And we can go down. I'm sorry for making everybody slightly seasick. It's a big document, so everybody look away for a moment. Just kind of going down to the RL1. We've really tried to explain a lot in here. As you can see, a lot of graphics. So as we talk about the RL1, which is the Hiltonia district, you can see here that you've got these standards in place. A minimum lot area, a minimum lot width. You've got building coverage, impervious surface coverage, which would impact any kind of parking that anybody would like to do. If something wanted to come in here in the RL1, it's got to meet these standards, which require it to kind of comply with the character that is present in the RL1, which is present in other districts. These are standards for non-residential structures that may occur. within these districts. So we've tried to make sure that things are, that things have the basic design elements that would happen. This is too big for what this would be within Hiltonia. It won't meet the standards that Hiltonia has. But you can see that there are some standards regarding transparency, regarding breaking up the frontage, so that it's not just a box that comes in. And just to highlight, these are the standards that are in place. And again, parking, landscape, signs, all of that applies to anything that happens in any of the districts.
DeConti, do you have any other comments or questions on this?
No, no other comments or questions, and
Okay.
I appreciate the explanation. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your comments. Next, Dr. Princess Hoagland.
Hello, everybody. I thank you for allowing us to comment, provide recommendations for revisions, and ask a question. And I want to begin with a question. And what Arista just showed us, the document she had pulled up, I want to start there. And my first question is regarding, and I wish I would have done it by article or whatever, but this is on page 8.2 of the document. And it's regarding drive-through facilities. And it indicates that drive-through facilities are prohibited as part of any use with the exception of financial institutions. And I had a question regarding the McDonald's that's on Greenwood Avenue, that's across from Trenton Central High School. And so would they be grandfathered in, or would they have to discontinue their drive-through? So that was a question for me.
Yes, any uses that exist are grandfathered in. They're considered non-conforming uses. There's some rules at the end of the ordinance regarding kind of how they function, but they don't have to take that up. They don't have to kind of pull up the drive-through. It gets to continue. The idea here is that no new ones would be allowed.
Okay, thank you so much for that. The next one, it's on A34. I'm sorry, 834. It's regarding just a recommendation for revision. That's all it is. It's 3B. I'm sorry, yeah.
830.
I'm sorry. I apologize. 824.
Okay.
824. And let me make sure I'm on the right page. I apologize.
No problem.
Okay.
I said 3B, so let me see where I'm getting a B. Actually,
the section title. Okay.
It's 4B. Yeah, I didn't do this. The section title is Temporary Outdoor Sales, and it's 4B. And it is just the way the sentence is unfinished. For 4B, it says a portion of a parking area may be used for temporary outdoor. Then it says permanent display. And somebody may have already brought that up.
No, nobody caught that.
Okay.
You got it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's missing
good catch.
temporary outdoor sales events.
Oh, okay.
Period. Yeah.
All right. And then the next one is 998. Is it carport? Let me see here. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my phone and the notes that I took, and I have to blow it up so I can see it.
So far you've topped us a lot. So you caught a big one. So take your time.
So for F1, when it talks about chicken coops, again, it's like it says chicken coops are permitted only in the rear yard only and must be 10 feet.
Wow, you got a big one.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be chicken coops are permitted only in the rear yard and must be 10 feet from any lot line. We've been going back and forth through red lines, so this is appreciated.
Okay. I didn't want to, bother you with minute things, but since I read through it, I just may as well tell you about it, right?
We would have any things that you catch like this that are, we really appreciate this. If you can also on the Trenton 250 LDO update, there's a comment form, just write those in. We need to know where these are.
All right. And then the last two really quick, and then I'll leave you alone. It's on page, I believe it's 913.
I feel like I'm getting a bad grade.
No, because there's so much. And and then people read through it and you skim through it. I can see how you missed that. And so that was for 5A, home occupation. I'm sorry, it's under, home occupation, 5A. And it says for purposes of the section, client meets up to 4 persons meeting with for the office or service. There's just extra words in there.
Yep.
And the last one, and then I'm done. I think it is, let me see, I think it's 15.6 or 7. Just 1 second, I'm sorry. Oh, somebody already mentioned the proper address for the Trent House. So you have it. You have a new address. I saw that. So I'm done. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, next, Kathy. You're muted. Still muted.
Up there. Am I okay now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Hi, thanks. And I apologize in advance if my dog barks. I've been trying to keep him quiet for 2 hours here. I'm also a Hilltony resident, and I know several of our neighbors have spoken before me, and all of their points are well taken. I agree with them. I'm a little confused. Currently, Hilltony is considered an RA zoning. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Could you define that a little bit more clearly as to what RA means? As we are currently zoned, what does that mean for us?
Let me see.
Do you want to bring it up on the screen, Michael?
Yep.
Okay. Or just, simple summarization. Because for me, I guess, and a lot of my neighbors, we just don't understand why you want to take an intact RA zoning and switch us to an RL1 with all these other, I know that, and I've learned a lot tonight about some of the things are already guaranteed or implied by state or federal law. So working within that, and we do have several of those in the neighborhood, some of which we don't even think are being managed or governed, or ordinances enforces. So there's some rather liberal uses. But if we're going to have to accept those other things, and then you talked about all the uses, then do we not ever need the variance process? I mean, if these are now going to be directly implied because of state and federal. Anyway, let me stop there. Let's do RA versus RL.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the zoning districts that exist within our current land use development ordinance the terminology has completely changed over. So there's no such thing as RA, RB. Those district terminologies are completely different now. This is not a revision of the previous land development ordinance. This is a new land development ordinance. So in our current land development ordinance, RA is one of our 2 lowest density districts in the city. The RA and the RB2 are the lowest density residential districts in the city of Trenton. In the new land development ordinance, RL1 is the lowest density residential district in the city of Trenton.
Okay, so has that been an ordinance that has been passed?
That is what we're discussing right now, is the new land development ordinance.
So as of right now, we're still RA until this plan gets voted upon. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. It just makes no sense to me. Absolutely. I've lived in Trenton for 30 years. I was in Hillcrest before I came to Hilltonia. It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, this is an intact neighborhood with over 300 homes
We know that there's a few illegal changes made to some. Again, city ordinances are not enforcing that. But to make all these changes, and I know we have to accept the state and federal things that you guys, and I know you guys walk, talk, and eat this. This is all new to us. It just makes no sense, even if we have to go to an RO1, to add all these new uses in this neighborhood. I mean, it's a family neighborhood. And now we're talking about, I mean, they can take a house and change it into a place of worship. Again, meeting all those criteria that I believe, you've all pointed out. It just doesn't make sense to me to do that to a neighborhood like this. It's a working neighborhood. Everybody here, it's a civically active neighborhood. And to make all these changes just sounds like insanity to me. That's me, my personal opinion. I've only lived here for 7 years, but still, I was in Hillcrest, very similar neighborhood. We were a working family, intact neighborhood. They do have a lot of these extra uses there, so I know they'll be grandfathered in, but we don't technically have those here in Hilltonia now, at least to my level of awareness. And to add all this stuff it crucifies the neighborhood. It just doesn't make sense. And you don't have to live here to understand that. And I don't want this to sound like a NIMBY, not in my backyard, but you have an intact 100-year circa 1920 neighborhood. And every home is a viable home, and people work together and talk together. And it's just, it doesn't make sense to me that you're going to do this to this neighborhood. It just doesn't make sense. And there's no point in arguing about it because you're going to do it. I mean, you're telling me you're taking us from an RA to an RL1. Doesn't sound like we have any standing in this. So I appreciate all your work, but it just doesn't make sense for this neighborhood. And that's all I have to say.
Tell him, Kathy.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's me talking that doesn't raise the hand.
I'm very emotional about this. To see all these changes to this little neighborhood just doesn't make sense. So thank you. I'm done. I'm going to start crying if I don't stop. Okay.
Thank you for your comments. And on that point,
I'm sorry, I don't have my hand up, but I'm just asking, are we the only neighborhood in the city of Trenton that even cares? How come there's nobody from Cadwallader or Glen Afton or whatnot? Are we just being targeted here? I don't hear anything or see anything from these neighborhoods.
Can I just ask, speaking?
Philip, I think not everyone was informed, and it goes back to what Mr. Austin said earlier. I don't think there was enough outreach. Our neighborhood was very active in finding this out, but it took a lot of work.
Well, that's pretty sad.
Michael and Rissa, sorry to put you on the spot here, but it doesn't sound like a hearing, but in your professional planning opinion, do you think that with this new land development ordinance, the fundamental character of the RL1 neighborhoods would change beyond potentially individual new uses? But from what I'm hearing, the intent is to maintain what makes these neighborhoods strong. And in looking at the LDO, and there's a description for RL1, it's intended to accommodate those areas comprising single-family dwellings on large lots at the lowest densities within the city of Trenton. The district seeks to protect the established development pattern within these existing residential areas. Select compatible non-residential uses are also permitted within the district. I know that's a long question, but sorry, Michael and Arista, do you think what kind of impact do you think it would have or will have?
I mean, quite frankly, from our experience in looking at this, the uses that are allowed, and if you look at what we've suggested here within the memorandum regarding, we've made some changes. We've taken some uses out of the RL1. There are a number, say the daycare home or the place of worship. These are all, per the state. These can happen now. If the state says it can happen, nothing we do in the ordinance can change that. And so, really, these are really, I don't foresee.
And whoever is not speaking, please mute yourself. There's a phone ringing in the background. Thank you.
I don't foresee significant changes happening to any of the single family districts. I mean, these are really what is permitted in here are the, per the purpose statement, compatible non-residential uses. Now, I understand things like the medical, dental, office clinic is something that's a little bit kind of bigger in terms of, coming into residential neighborhoods, but this is a city policy established per the community health and wellness plan due to a crisis of healthcare that's happening in the city of Trenton. But other things, you've got basically what would be allowed would be a community garden, the community residence, which is allowed per federal fair housing, the daycare home per the state, the educational facilities, which is kind of typical to single family. We don't see new ones coming in and basically changing a neighborhood. We've allowed for the medical, dental, as I spoke of, a neighborhood commercial establishment. There are none of these that qualify in Hiltonia, so this use is in that area is negligible. It can't happen. It's not allowed to happen. Place of worship is a federal regulation. The others that are allowed are the rooming house for senior citizens. That is a state statute. We cannot prohibit those per the state. Wireless telecommunications, whatever required there that's really, again, federal regulations. And then the domestic violence shelters is permitted per the single family districts, as kind of tied to, kind of these issues of crisis. And those are very, very, nobody sees those. They really want to just blend into it. So I don't see many of the uses that we've allowed, and we've made changes. We've suggested changes here that take out some of the kind of more intensive uses from the RL1, which applies to other RL1 neighborhoods within the city of Trenton. I don't foresee the character of the neighborhood changing.
Thank you. Becky, I believe you're up next. You muted. Still muted.
Yes. With all due respect, I know everybody means well. I'm older. I've lived a long time. I've been in a number of different places. There is, as I said, I moved back to Trenton, having worked in Trenton as a reporter, as a government official in several places, including a governor's press secretary and communications director. And then in the private sector, I had my own business. Hiltonia is a special place. I think that you want the people who live in Hiltonia to support the city of Trenton. The city of Trenton has been abandoned by so much of the state. It makes me so upset. This is such an awesome place. But if you come in here and make us change our way of living, to Kathy's point, so that I moved here 5 years ago. I don't want to fight other people. I'm here to help other people. But if every time I turn around, there's going to be some incursion on this little, small, lovely area, wonderful neighborhood, with something else coming in, I live a block from Stuyvesant Avenue. I hear the gunshots. I'm ready to deal with whatever's in the park. I know this is a diverse area. I embrace that diversity. Let us keep supporting that. All of us are involved in our community. Many of us work for the park, for the city, for the kids, for so many different things. And it feels like, to Kathy's point, it's like you're attacking Hiltonia. Why? Why? We are your biggest supporters. Do we really need to do all this stuff? Let us, if anything, bring us more into the fold and let us help you do your jobs. Let us do whatever we can from our areas of influence to actually make a difference. Don't make us fight them and you. Make us all one. Am I being corny? I hope not.
It's okay if you are.
They're not at all.
That's it for me.
Okay, thank you. Any response from city staff or consultants or? think we can go on to the next one then. Guest or guest.
Linda.
I think there's a guest above Linda.
Yes.
Yes.
A president.
Hello. I am hello. I'm a
Hello.
long-term Hiltonia resident. I'm also the current president of the Hiltonia Association. First, I would like to thank you for reviewing and limiting many of the expanded uses that we were concerned about in the original documents. Hiltonia does understand that the state and the federal laws override many of the uses, such as group homes, the home daycare centers, boarding homes, particularly for seniors, houses of worship. Our question is not so much that those can be used. Our concerns are the density of the amount of residents that can be held in these uses. So our concerns are really to maintain our quality of life in this neighborhood, to have our large homes be well landscaped, well taken care of, and we will preserve our style of life, our property values, and we are currently a very inclusive neighborhood. We certainly are not concerned about some of the uses as much as we are the density, things like signage on places of worship, things like signage should there be a daycare center. Hiltonia has always had concern for commercial uses and vehicles, those kinds of things. I think one of our real concerns is not so much the limitations that are provided for in the ordinances. I think people are confusing that some of the enforcement areas of our ordinances are not being taken care of. And our biggest problems are the illegal uses that we have in the neighborhood, and we have difficulty trying to get the city to assist us in doing away with the things that are not in line with the zoning. So I don't think it's that we're trying to limit things that can be done by state law, federal law, as group homes, as boarding homes, those kinds of things. We're trying to make sure that we don't have any overloading in terms of traffic, in terms of signage, in terms of commercial visibility. Even in terms of the doctor's offices, if it was a private doctor who wanted to use part of his home as a place to see patients, that would be fine. But most doctors these days are not private physicians. They are owned by the hospitals. Their practices are owned by the hospitals. They are told who they will see and who they will not see and how many people they will see. Our concerns, again, are the density and keeping the character of the neighborhood as it is now. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would like to say too, to that point regarding any kind of non-residential that would be in there, say a place of worship, or even we have brought up the medical dental. There are specific signage requirements. There's sign standards. That's another section of the LDO that does limit the amount of signage that's allowed within a residential district. It is meant to be smaller. It is meant to be not the full range that you would see. Just to speak to that point, the full range that you would see, say, in a commercial district. Just to be clear on that.
I just want to say that I agree with a lot of what you just said.
Thank you.
I do. I mean, the city we do not have a sufficient inspections department right now to enforce our laws, and that's the reality of our city. We have one zoning officer to enforce all zoning laws for the city of Trenton everywhere. We do not have a sufficiently staffed housing inspection department. We do not have a sufficiently staffed technical assistance inspections department. That's our reality right now. We are not adequately meeting our needs for inspections. We are not doing, and that's our reality right now. I can't do very much about that in this ordinance, unfortunately. This is something that's going to take time and energy to address. By all means, please do keep complaining to the city. You should. It's your right. We're not doing a good job, and I can't say that we are. And as a city staff member, this hurts me too. I don't like having to say that, I'm not doing a good job of something. But that's our reality. In terms of this ordinance ourselves, this is not an enforcement mechanism. This ordinance doesn't say how inspections department works. This ordinance does not say that we're going to get more resources into our city, and that's our reality. And I can't make that happen with this ordinance. I think if we want to have conversations about this, we should. I'm happy to schedule meetings about it. I'm happy to have you come to City Hall to talk about your complaints with us. We have residents all the time who come in to complain about stuff that's happening in our city, and we do when you come in do our best to address them. And it's hard, but you're not wrong about this at all. We are trying to meet certain needs in our city that we don't have, such as doctor's office, and we're trying to do that everywhere. Most of what I think is the concern in this ordinance is for things that we're not permitted to change by state or federal law, and we have to deal with that. In all of these cases, these are things that are functionally permitted right now in our current ordinance as well. So these aren't changes in our ordinance. The one thing to really pay attention to is the design standards in the district, and how those design standards limit development in the district. The way something looks and feels is something that we can regulate as part of this district. We want this district looking the same way. So if you can't meet the standards in terms of setbacks, if you can't meet the standards in terms of building heights, I think you've made your point that we maybe should have a conversation about the size of doctor's offices permitted in the district. Maybe that's something that we can talk about as part of our condition and what would be appropriate for this district. And maybe we should drop it 1,000 feet by 1,000 feet. We can talk about these things, but there's very, very little here that I think is going to fundamentally change the district. And a lot of it is stuff that's currently permitted, and it's going to be moved forward. I agree with you that we have to do a better job inspecting our city. I want that to happen very, very badly, and I do agree that affects your neighborhood for sure.
Michael, I'd like to thank you for that opinion and your comments. Just to share a little bit more about myself, I have lived in Hiltonia for 45 years. I have been active in the Hiltonia Association since 1978. And you are absolutely right. Many of the problems we have in Hiltonia are not the zoning, they are not the planning, they are the enforcement issues. And Hiltonia would not look like it does today if the association had not made great efforts to reach out to inspections, to our council people, to the department directors, to the cabinet, to everyone. Back when we started our association and the Trenton Council of Civic Associations was more active, there was a very good policy for people who had issues to work through first their neighborhood association, then through the Trenton Council of Civic Associations, who would then work with the cabinet, the directors, etc. Unfortunately, in this day and age, people are not willing to do that volunteer service that they were willing to do 20 or 30 years ago. And we will continue to work with you, with the chief of staff, with the business administrator, with the head of inspections, because we want Hiltonia to continue to be what it has been for 100 years. And not only have I lived here for a long time, I sold real estate in the city from the mid 80s. I then took a break, and I too was a city employee for 25 years. I was the deputy tax assessor. So I certainly know how people can get angry. I certainly know how they don't want to listen to what we tell them the law is. But we have to do a better job of making people who purchase properties in these neighborhoods understand that there are rules in terms of the density, in terms of running a 1-800 junk business from Hiltonia with 2 dump trucks sitting filled with trash for days at a time. Again, not part of this process, but it needs to be included if we're going to make the city a better place to live. The city, a lot of the dense neighborhoods do not look good because enforcement is worse there than it is in places like Hiltonia, Glen Afton, and Berkeley Square. So it needs to be more of a team effort if we're going to make all of this work. And I am more than happy to meet with anyone. I am now retired, so I have more time, and I will reach out to you, I promise. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I did want to add just a couple things, and I think this was a good conversation. First being, if the use is illegal, it remains illegal. This LDO is not going to make it a legal use. It is illegal if it was there illegally. And what we found often is that in issues of enforcement, many times it's because the ordinances in place aren't clear. And we feel that the LDO as a whole makes things clearer so it can make things easier for enforcement to see what's allowed, what's not allowed. Just kind of as a kind of philosophical kind of overview. And as if anybody is looking at their screens, as you can see, I've kind of pared down the list to show you what are the uses per the recommended changes we proposed tonight that would be allowed, and highlighted which are federal and state or city policy that require these to be allowed.
Do those policies allow any addressing of issues such as density or the number of occupants in a house? Because some of the problems we have are homes, and they may not be legal uses at this point, but they just have way too many people, way too many cars, way too many events and parties going on. I mean, we have had a neighbor who had events where they sold liquor, where they advertised on Eventbrite to come to events in Hiltonia. Those things, there needs to be a way to coordinate the allowable uses, the enforcement, and the understanding of the residents that live here as well, to be perfectly blunt about it. Some of it is our trying to educate the people that live in our neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, it really is a combination of things that happen. Things like occupancy aren't controlled by the LDO. The LDO controls density on the basis of lot sizes. So it's the 8,000 square foot lot size of the RL1. The number of people in a home, if it is, that is controlled through the occupancy codes and the occupancy ordinances that are out there, which are not part of the LDO.
When you talked about the allowable uses for things like dentists and doctors, rather than it being a set number of square feet, could it be a percentage of the size of the building in question? We have homes here that go from 1,200 square feet to 7,000 square feet. And if you're talking about 5,000 square feet in a property that's only 6,000 square feet, then it's really becoming a commercial use, not a residential use. Could it be written in that the allowable uses for doctor's offices or any of those types of uses could be 20% of the property or 25% of the property, rather than a flat number of square feet for any property in Trenton, in Hiltonia?
I mean, I think the square footage is the one that is kind of a better, more objective number that can be measured. Percentages can kind of change based on the building, a little bit more difficult to enforce. I think Michael has already pointed out that perhaps we need to, in particular in the RL1, maybe let's take another look at that 5,000 square foot gross floor area. That may need to lower if we're looking at kind of local healthcare happening within residential neighborhoods. I think that is something we'll go back and discuss, that limitation, how big that could be. You're going to kind of end up in the same place if you do a percentage. It's kind of easier if you just limit the gross floor area.
Well, it does limit some of those very small houses we have in the neighborhood from having a commercial use. Some of the very big ones where a portion of the first floor would be negligible in terms of it, the remainder of it being a residence, is a little bit different than saying you can use, 20% of a big house, but you can use 75% of a small house.
We'll take a look at that.
Again, if we can be of any help, those of us that are on the Hiltonia Association board or long-term residents, we would be glad to have a group meeting if that would be helpful to you. We certainly intend to follow through on all of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Whoever's team's name is Guest, if you'd like to speak.
Yes, my name is Tyra. and I live in Hiltonia. And I just want to say that I definitely agree with Kathy and Becky. I'm a little dismayed by these changes that are being proposed. I've lived in Trenton all my life. I've lived from North Trenton to West Trenton to the island, and I'm here in Hiltonia. And I remember when there were doctor offices all up and down West State Street, but they left. I remember when they remodeled the hotel, Holiday Inn. They spent money remodeling that hotel, and it was useless because nobody came here. It was just used as a substitute office building. Then they built a hotel down in downtown Trenton, which is useless, which was another waste of money. My thing is, if you're going to really do something, build downtown Trenton, repurpose some of these buildings that we have. What about Bellevue Avenue and Mercer Hospital in that area? Why would you want to come and encroach on this neighborhood, which is a good neighborhood, which is a nice neighborhood, the places of worship and schools? We have plenty of schools. I mean, has there been some type of needs analysis conducted that all these different types of commercial businesses or schools or house worships are needed?
So I will say that for the medical, yes, there's been analysis of this. There's a huge need for it. This is all
Okay,
elaborated
so
in
what
great
about
detail.
Bellevue Avenue? I
What?
remember when Mercer Hospital was open. I remember that was a great place. People went there. People needed a place like that. What about those buildings? What are they going to do with those buildings?
The issue is attracting the doctors. The issue is that they're not willing to come to a lot of places in Trenton right now. We are
And they're
desperate
not
for
going. I don't think they're going to come. Period. I mean, they have their locations. They have where they want to be, and people go see them. And people in Trenton, if they have access to public transportation and mobile services that would transport them to those doctor offices. And trust me, I know, because I know plenty of people who utilizes it.
Unfortunately, I actually think you're right about that. I think that there's very few doctors who are going to come into Trenton under any circumstances. That's a devastating problem that we have in our city, and it's one of the reasons why we're trying to be so flexible with doctors' offices. We are desperate for them. They're not coming. They're not coming in almost any place in the city of Trenton. They have left the city of Trenton in great numbers over the past 10 years. We have a lot of documentation. We have a lot of
So maybe there's
documentation.
another way to answer that then. Let's be creative. Let's make the connections between the doctors and the people, but it doesn't necessarily have to be like right here in Trenton. So, and given everything that's going on with doctors and doctors' offices, and frankly, they're now intimidated by the larger companies that are owning them. Going to several doctors myself at this point in my life, it's not easy for anybody. Let's be creative. Let's figure out how to get the people of Trenton best served, which I think we all want, but do it in a way that works.
And I just feel like, when you start out with allowing certain things in the neighborhood, it becomes a slippery slope. I know I keep hearing that it's not going to change the neighborhood that much and blah, blah, blah. I don't believe it, because I've lived in Trenton all my life, and I've seen how neighborhoods that were once nice and viable neighborhoods have gone downhill.
What I would say is let's put our heads together. Let's try to be creative. Why don't we get a group of all of us together and get in a room and actually do some brainstorming about how to do things differently? I work a lot with the pharma industry. There are different ways to go about these things. Let's figure out how to do that best serves the people of Trenton. I think that's what we all care about.
That sounds like a nice idea, but
I
it's
definitely
beyond the scope
agree.
of the LDO. But it does sound like a very noble effort.
I mean, I guess the answer to that is that we did our best to do that. We did a community health and wellness plan that was put together over the course of 5 years of work with our community partners. That was put together with community residents. Did have a lot of community input in it, and this was the policy that the community agreed on.
But do you think that's working?
But it was adopted a year and a half ago.
Michael, the question I have is, who was the community that participated and made those decisions? I don't think anybody ever reached out to anyone in Hiltonia.
No.
Nope.
So
I think much of us really care about Trenton, and we weren't involved.
So I want to just address that issue of neighborhood engagement because we really do the best we can with it. I want to show you, as part of our LDO engagement, I brought it up here, the number of presentations that were done. So from the time of our public of this was released, this is actually our second public comment period. In our first public comments period, we actually had well over 60 public comments from members of the public and a whole planning board meeting where we addressed a huge number of comments already. We've done individual meetings for Planning Board, Landmarks Commission, Zoning Board, East Trenton Collaborative, Old Trenton Green Team, Old Trenton Neighborhood Association, Trenton Community TCCA, Capital City Community Coalition, Downtown Association, Trenton Historic Development Collaboration, Neighborhood Improvement Association, Berkeley Square Association, LELDEV, Villa the Park, Trenton Health Team, tabling events. We've done table events all over the city, including Art All Day, Passaic Street Classic, Trenton River Days. We've done press releases about this, multiple press releases to try and get to members of the public. We've done online posting.
Yeah. You guys are awesome. Trust me, you are the vanguard for all of us. And we all haven't necessarily paid attention to what you're doing all the time. Our bad, not yours. You are trying. How can we together make this even better? How can we pull in all the learnings that you've already gotten and do some things in different kinds of ways? And, again, working with like the pharma industry as I am, things change so rapidly. Your head is spinning all the time. But we need to recognize that and be smart, be innovative, tap into, as I'm hearing with my clients every day, the latest in innovation, the latest in technology, the latest in AI, all that kind of stuff. Can we take all of this, look at where we are now? When we're talking about breaking up a community like the Hiltonia Neighborhood Association, I'm sorry, that's not working. In my mind, it doesn't work. That doesn't mean the people of Hiltonia aren't responsible and don't care about what happens in Trenton. They wouldn't be living here to begin with if they didn't care about the people of Trenton. We do. We do. How can we do things differently? How can we take that next step? And again, with my clients, we're going through the same thing. How do we deliver medicines to patients faster? So we're trying to help the people of Trenton. I feel like, and trust me, the last thing I need to do is take on another cause. But at the same time, what's more important? How can we take all the good work you've done and bring it to the next level? Does anybody disagree with that?
So
I don't know.
I am very happy to have conversations about our community health and wellness plan, how we should implement it, what should we change about it. In our community health and wellness plan, if you go to the back of the plan, we have a whole list of items that we recognize are not currently being addressed in the city of Trenton and that we need additional policies for. In the next year, we are supposed to be doing a review of the Trenton 250 master plan, including all the elements to it. I am happy to talk about the community health and wellness plan and how we should amend it, what we should do to that. But we have a community health and wellness plan that was just adopted that hasn't been implemented at all yet. It only was just adopted. We have policies in it that we have put together for it. So, for example, as part of the community health and wellness plan, we identified respiratory health as something that we didn't understand very well in the city of Trenton. So we now have respiratory health monitors in 12 locations in the city of Trenton, and we're trying to learn about how to address respiratory health better. We obviously have a hospital that closed after the community health and wellness plan was adopted, and that wasn't anticipated. We didn't know that was happening, and it's a disaster. So
I'm aware of all these things, and you're exactly right. But the point is, yes, St. Francis closed. Capital Health is here. How do we work better with them? How do we do the things better? The Trenton Health Team. How do we get them involved? The other nonprofits in the area. Things are moving so fast. How can anybody keep up with this? I totally understand and respect what you're saying. But we're in a different place now. To your point, St. Francis is gone. Capital Health is ascendant. Let's tap into them. Let's figure out what to do with this. And let's figure out, because ultimately, as we're seeing tonight, all this is filtering into all of our neighborhoods. And not necessarily in a good way. It's like we need to deal with both of these things. And I realize it drives me nuts when people say this to me. We need to do a reassessment. But is this time to do that? I don't know.
I think this is a great conversation, but we should get back on the agenda item of the land development ordinance. Next up is Lily. You are muted.
I'm sorry. Thank you, and thank you for the extended time. And I'm not going to take up much more time. I just wanted to follow up with Michael about going back to the drawing board about the 5,000 foot cap on the medical and dental offices or clinics. That would be great if that could be limited further. I also appreciate that it's conditional, meaning that there is a process that has to take place, correct? If an organization, a business wants to open a medical clinic here. So that process would allow for further commentary. But how do we follow up on how will I find out if you do limit that 5,000 feet? Or how will we be informed? Do we just look for updates to the plan, or how do we find out? You said you were going to follow up, think about that some more.
That's a good question. That's a good question.
I would say that the kind of following up on this, we would release simultaneously a new red line draft. As this kind of moves forward into the next step, we would show a red line draft that show these changes that we've shown, that's accompanied by a clean draft that accepts those changes, that can move forward through the process. But at least that way the public can see the changes that were made based on what we went over tonight. And if we make that change to the medical dental office.
I appreciate that. I'll follow up on the website. I really appreciate that. And I must say, I've been in Trenton a very long time. And when Mercer Hospital, which is now Capital Health, folded up their tent and moved, that's a cause of a lot of problems we're seeing now, because it wasn't just the hospital. There were tons of medical of the physicians that were affiliated with the hospital in that vicinity. So this is what St. Francis also it's a law. It's a infrastructural systemic problem. I guess you all realize that, but thank you.
There are a couple hands raised that were raised before, but just to check. DeConti, do you have any other comment or question? And guest, any comment or question? And I know there were a few comments in the chat that I think that people have responded to. I can't disagree about whether they've been addressed, but they've been responded to. Does anyone else have any other comments or questions on the land development ordinance presented today? Did someone say something?
This is Lily. I just said not. I have no more questions.
Okay, thank you. Michael, do you have any closing comments or thoughts on this?
I don't. I think we're just looking for guidance from the planning board on anything that you'd like to see in terms of of how we should be moving forward. We're really ultimately answerable to you.
Yeah. You're not looking for any formal approval or anything, right?
No, we're not approving anything today.
Okay. Any board members have thoughts on going forward with this?
I mean, just to get on a totally different topic, there was a little mention of signage and facades. I guess more for commercial and downtown. I think right now it's a little hamstrung by like size and what people can use. I don't know what we have in there signage wise. There's not really much guidelines.
Like we have a whole new signage section of the ordinance. It's big.
Okay.
It's very detailed. It is very specific. People looked at me like I was crazy about how much is in there, but it's very detailed about the guidelines for it. There are charts about exactly what is and is not permitted. Every type of sign that you can possibly imagine is mentioned. There's a lot of signs that I did not imagine that are mentioned. It's a lot.
And we really tried to, as we created the design standards for commercial areas, really tried to match the types of signs that are allowed and their sizes to work together to create one kind of unified form, so that we're very cognizant of the fact that a giant sign on a small building looks bad, just as bad as a small sign on a giant building looks ridiculous too. So we really tried to be more proportional and really address the form that's out.
Is it a percentage based thing?
It depends on what sign you're asking about.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Any other board comments on?
I'm pretty new to this area, and as far as I'm concerned, I've been here 4 years, and I moved here. My name is June Guerrero, and I moved here from Marlborough, New Jersey. And the reason I moved here, because I fell in love with this house and the community. And there are a lot of wonderful people that live here. And the best part is that it is a very diversified community. But what I'm hearing is you're making a new city out of Hiltonia. It's almost like, I don't know, reminds me of the movie Truman. So you want everything to be, I don't know. This is a community. This is where homes are. You know what? It's fine. We have craft down the street. We have 2 wonderful schools down the street. We have an amazing park. And then you want to put certain things within the Hiltonia community? That's kind of absurd. I've never, ever heard of anything like that. And in a number of towns, you know what? There are communities like Hiltonia. Everybody is welcomed here. You move here. We have we have a board. We have people involved in the community, and it is inclusive. It doesn't matter who you are. I was the treasurer for 2 years, and you know what? The most important thing to me is volunteering. And people like Becky, who, when it comes to Cadwalader, I met Kathy, who is an amazing person when it comes to giving the Hilltone, Lily. It's really sad to me that you want to change things here. It's almost, to me, I don't know, it seems like something spiteful. That's how I feel. And then you're talking about signage. That's what's important. I don't know about that, but anyway, I'm done. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments at board members? Any thoughts on what we've heard tonight and what you've read in the LDO?
I just have to say, I don't want this to end negatively. I was a public employee myself for many years. You guys are doing God's work. I have to say that. We totally appreciate it, but we also just know that there are other people, other entities that are involved. And the reason I'm calling for some kind of collaboration is because I think all of us talking here, in essence, are really on the same page. We just have to figure out how to make that happen. Because to Jean's point, I really think this is such a great place. We all care about it. How do we move that forward in a positive way? We're not upset with you. We want to make things work for everybody. So thank you so much for all you do. And thank you to our neighbors for all of our speaking out. Yay.
Thank you. Charlie, do we want to wrap up? Is there anything else to talk about?
Nothing else. I guess I'll just give a closing thought on it. I think we've heard a lot of passion, which is great. That's one of the many things that makes us a great city to live in. We can disagree about the impacts of the LDO on certain neighborhoods, but I think we can agree the intent is to keep what's great about neighborhoods while making some small changes here and there. And I'm a planner, and I don't think the LDO will result in a huge destruction of neighborhood, or I don't think it'll be unrecognizable in 5, 10, 20 years. And I think that the work that went into it had that in mind, not trying to have those sorts of changes, but I understand that it can be a lot to see all this in one document, in one page. Can seem like being piled up on in one neighborhood. Of some of these things, the goal is the opposite. It's to disperse doctor's offices, have doctor's office in more places. The goal is not to have a big medical office park in Hiltonia. It wouldn't be, definitely. We would not approve that. I for one would not approve that. That is my closing thought on the LDO, and I thank everyone for your participation, your comments, your questions, your attending. I know it's been a long process that went into the making of this document. So I guess we can close the hearing. With nothing else on the agenda, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.